Hello and welcome back to Lorehammer. I'm your host Mark, and joining me today we got Christian. Hey, welcome.
Hey, I would rather do nothing else than spend Valentine's Day with my fellow virgins.
Yes, fellow virgins, incels, perhaps even if you include Jordan in it. Hey, and we do on this episode. Welcome, Jordan.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Yeah, today we got a fun episode of Chaos ahead of us. We're talking Chaos Gods and the Great Game. You know, is that why we're all here to talk about that instead of hang out with our wives? Was there chaos at home and now this is like the safe space from the chaos, or is this the chaos we need? Who knows? Hard to say, but we're here.
There's nothing I would rather do on
Nothing.
Valentine's Day.
Not
Nothing else. I can't think of anything else.
Okay.
Fun fact, though, everyone thinks Valentine's Day is all about Slaanesh, but it's actually about Nurgle. And because Nurgle loves his people and he loves you. And
Okay.
I've had the personal experience of being visited by Nurgle all week, so I can only share his love with everyone else out there.
Nice. Okay. That's gross. I don't like that. Keep your touches to yourself, your filthy touches. I don't want that kind of love, Valentino love. This episode is brought to you by Merlin Miniatures. Promo code Lorehammer. Are you guys excited about this? Like, when we sell miniatures with them, we get a little kickback if you use the link in the description below. Have you bought miniatures yet for them?
I actually lose more money. Yeah, I actually lose more money because I just turn around and spend more money on miniatures than I get back. So it's just like a money loop.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Isn't that... I found myself in that similar loop, actually. So interesting. Yeah. And Jordan, how did you find yourself in the Merlin Miniatures money loop of just...
Yeah, I think it's going to end up being the same thing. Yeah, it's sort of like our modern economy. You think you're getting more, but you're actually putting in more.
Shit. Well, either way, I love it because it's
a hamster wheel. Yeah.
Either way, I love it because they ship everywhere in the world, which is pretty sweet. And if you join their mailing list, you get 15% off. And they also do a couple other stuff, which was kind of interesting that I was kind of reading up on. They do kind of like a website blog. So they do Faction of the Month, where they highlight new Warhammer factions every month and give discounts for that faction. They also do creative spotlights. So, they showcase hobbyists and do stuff like that. A couple exclusive blogs and quizzes and just, a nice little website. So while you're buying minis, you can scroll through some lore and read up on what you're buying and then come here and buy some more minis from us or something like that. Where does the loop start and end? I don't know, but either way, start right now at Merlin Miniatures.
Get on in there.
Yeah.
All right. And then, if you want to continue supporting the show, you go to Patreon and join the Imperial Tithe. Get the ad-free version of our show for $2.50, not including the Merlin Miniatures ad, and the video version for $5.
Absolutely. And on that point, you can also jump in on the live stream, which we do every time we record. We have a live stream, and all those who are Patreon members can jump in on the chat room while we record the episode. You can also call in as a guest at the end of the show. And as always, you could join me for Whiskey and Warhammer. Unfortunately, I'm still down stateside, so I do not have access to the whiskey cabinet. So today we are doing Corona.
Oh, that's also from Bud Light to Corona. You need to get back to Canada.
He's just on a urine sampler.
I had to get that Mexican shout out there for today. Maybe next time we'll do tequila.
Yeah, and speaking of shout outs, we have one fellow virgin in the chat right now. Liar, welcome to the chat. You aren't with your girlfriend either, so we're also assuming you're a virgin. And we will be calling people out name by name as they join and shame them for not hanging out with their girlfriends or wives. So that'll be fun throughout the show. So welcome to the club, Liar. Yeah, let's get to the episode today. We got a fun one ahead of us. Today, we're talking about the Chaos Gods, and we're going down a little series, and we're going to be doing this episode and then 6 more or something like that, depending. But we're talking about each god, and this episode is going to be context for each god. We're going to be talking about how they actually kind of came to be, their realms, what the great game is, their powers, from demons and stuff to beasts of chaos, the followers. And then we'll also talk about some minor gods and entities in the warp too. I think, Jordan, you asked this when I thought or brought this topic up. You're like, haven't we talked about this before?
Yeah. It seems like we have touched on cat. I thought we specifically went over like specific gods, but maybe I'm mistaken.
We definitely did, Jordan. And this is a callback all the way back to episode 1, The Warp. And in
Wow.
that episode, we said, yeah, one day we'll do each god one by one. Soon, TM. And that
time has finally arrived.
Is now, boys, 8 years later. It is now soon TM. So I'm happy to have you guys with me. No, but like honestly, since that episode, we've obviously talked about the chaos gods, and it's hard not to in 40K mention them almost every episode, but we've never gone into like a deep dive into all of them. And there's one I'm particularly excited for, the Dark King, but we'll save that for the end too. We'll get there in the episode. But yeah, like I said, this episode is kind of just going to be the first context builder episode of this little series before we get back to Primarchs and Legions.
Taking a little break from the main show, right? Anytime we talk about Space Marines as a main episode, everything else just a side episode.
Yeah, just our side boob. Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. Gods of Chaos and the Great Game. The Chaos Gods, also known as the Dark Gods or Ruinous Powers, are vast, unfathomable entities of pure malice and unrelenting will. They are not bound by flesh nor constrained by mortal understanding. They are the living essence of the warp itself, the roiling, nightmarish realm that festers beneath the thin veneer of reality. They are no mere deities, for such a term is far too feeble to encompass their nature. Wrought from the unbridled emotions and raw desires of sentient life, they are both the architects of ruin and its inevitable consequence. Every surge of wrath, every whispered ambition, every anguished scream feeds their growing dominion, shaping them into vast sentient malignances that brood within the immaterium. Their tendrils are ever reaching. The greatest and most insidious of these entities have ascended to absolute dominance, becoming the dark gods of chaos. Though limitless in might, they are shackled by their own insatiable hunger, each embodying a singular obsession given form and purpose. They are gluttonous for devotion, ceaseless in their schemes to ensnare mortal souls, for it is through corruption and conquest that they grow ever stronger. Man, I feel like I'm going to start like speaking backwards pretty quick here and chanting in Latin.
Yeah.
To them, mortals are but fuel, meager, fleeting things whose emotions swell and crash like waves upon the shores of eternity. Yet humanity, in its boundless suffering and reckless ambition, is their greatest prize. With every whispered prayer to the abyss and every act of depravity and bloodshed, the veil between reality and the warp thins. And should the dark gods triumph, should their dominion be made absolute, it would herald the unmaking of all things, the final dissolution, the end of the material universe itself. For chaos is boundless, chaos is eternal, and chaos will never be sated.
Yeah. So
what an intro, Mark.
Yeah. So take a shot every time, or a sip of that Corona, or whatever piss you. Yeah, there you go. Every time we make a reference to water or the ocean in this episode, whose emotions swell and crash like the waves upon the shore of eternity. The warp is always fun. Like we've talked about this so many times of how this kind of could work, but then the next episode will contradict each other because it's always the warp and who knows what's going to happen with it. But the one thing is I found the ocean and the warp is always a good analogy.
It works. Quick kind of side note, man, ever since we spoke with Rick Priestley there, like my mind just goes back to our conversation whenever I'm like consuming 40K content now. And like the ocean, yeah, I know like it's overplayed as like an analogy, but it is like it speaks to like an ancient understanding of like the ocean. Like there was always this legendary association with like the waters of chaos. Like being like a really deep cut from like ancient traditions. You know, the Egyptians, the Greeks all had this like same idea of like chaos being, and like chaos in the, not obviously in the 40K sense, but in like the sense of like everything that was without order in it. And then their kind of pantheons are what bring order to chaos. You hear a lot of that too in I think Jungian psychology. Jordan, you probably know a little bit more about that. But yeah, just that concept of chaos and water and oceans. And it makes sense, right? Like water is like can't be contained. The oceans kind of like swell into storms or they're calm. Like there's no predicting what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it
like
is a
in ancient like Sumerian, Hebrew, even Egyptian sort of theology, the ocean is like occupied by creatures, you know, like some mostly malevolent creatures that uh, kind of live in the deep. Um, and often, even like if anyone like reads the Bible, the Old Testament, when anytime like a prophet is talking about the deep, or even in the first chapter of Genesis, um, uh, like it talks about the spirit of God hovered over the face of the deep. That like that kind of gets missed on our modern conceptions because we just think like a literal ocean, you know. But to them, this is like a whole. Uh, this is a whole realm of creatures and uh, beings and entities that exist and live in this deep and um, yeah, it also pierces the psychological too because it's like what we don't know and what we don't understand. So then you kind of conjure up these creatures, you know. But notably, yeah, notably, like Leviathan is like uh, would almost be like a chaos god, if you will, like a creature from the deep that sort of ruled the oceans and yeah, and was just like this entity that is in ancient mythology. So yeah, it is very interesting that that ocean um,
metaphor.
yeah metaphor is the is sort of like very it has a thread running through it like that even goes into our ancient past.
I think another thread too is like that sense of adventure and like that adventurous spirit, like much like that the people who had sailed across the oceans the first time into the unknown. You're like, who the heck knows? You know, and
Yeah.
it's different than walking over the mountain. It seems very different walking over a mountain than going on a boat. So that sense of adventure, that adventuring spirit of mankind, that they just now are going to go into this alternate dimension to travel, and hopefully they come out the other side.
Yeah, they don't know. Yeah.
Who knows, man?
Absolutely.
Hopefully. A lot of creatures in the deep.
Yeah, and speaking of the deep and these ocean metaphors, in the forgotten dawn of the galaxy, the warp was a swirling tempest of formless hunger. Its powers vast yet unfocused, a sea, there it is again, of shifting madness, not yet sculpted into will. The emotions of mortal life bled into its depths like rivers feeding a fathomless abyss, unshaped, unclaimed, but nothing remains unclaimed forever. As the sentient races of the galaxy flourished, so too did the torrents of their desires. Furor and fury, ambition and desire, until the warp itself stirred with malignant purpose. From the seething mass of psychic energy, entities vast and insidious took shape, no longer bound to the ebb and flow of mortal passions, but wielding them as weapons. Thus, the gods of chaos were born. They did not wait to be worshipped. They reached into the fragile minds of mortals, whispering in dreams and shadows, demanding fealty in exchange for power. The more a species raged, lusted, schemed, and slaughtered, the more these entities fed and swelled, growing ever stronger, their dominion spreading like a cancer through time and space. The warp is no mere reflection of reality. It is a nightmare, given form, a rolling storm of madness and potential, sustained by the raw, unfiltered emotions of every thinking creature who loves, hates, and suffers. It is beyond reason, beyond the mortal mind's feeble grasp, a domain of symbols and impossibilities. Its tide can be channeled, its power tapped by those cursed with the gift of the psyker, their souls acting as conduits for the infinite horrors that lurk beyond the veil. Yet, for all its horror, the warp is also the lifeblood of interstellar dominion. Through the shifting tides, the Imperium and its rivals carve paths across the cold void, guided by navigators who see where others are blind. In the golden age of the Emperor's Great Crusade, mankind thought itself the master of this force, believing it merely a tool, but they knew only half of the truth.
I love this idea of like soul conduits and psychers and stuff, and just souls in general, where, if ever there's a time to have a soul conversation, it just seems like it's that connection to the warp. So if you think about like your soul, think of a conduit size and think of the warp with a straw. So maybe that conduit is the straw. And the more of a psych you are, the bigger that straw gets. Tau, very little straw. The warp guys aren't even going to go to that conduit to take a little sip. So tiny,
Tiny
pequito.
little straws.
Yeah, I really like that kind of analogy too. So just
Yeah.
somebody just drinking, and you might be a psyker and an Eldar, very powerful, just as this straw just waiting, massive, and the warp will come.
Not even a straw, like a pipeline.
Yeah, there's a little factory set up on the one side, pumping that soul juice out
Yeah.
constantly if you're Slaanesh. History continued. The denials of the early Imperium, its dogma of its so-called imperial truth, were lies born of necessity. The gods it dismissed as mere superstition were real, their hunger endless, their touch inevitable. They are more than storms of psychic force, more than malign currents in the seas of souls. They are the ruinous powers, the pantheon of damnation, the primordial annihilator. No name spoken by the mortal tongues can encapsulate their terrible essence, yet those who have glimpsed their shadow know them as the chaos gods. They covet the material realm, though it is anathema to their being, just as though air drowns the creature of the abyss. They extend their will across the veil, corrupting, tempting, waging an eternal war for dominance over the flesh-bound world. They forge nightmares into reality, molding warp-spawned horror into demons, manifestations of the boundless malice. But to truly shape existence, they require vessels, mortal champions to carry their corruption, to spread their influence like a plague. To such wretched souls, they often power beyond imagining, gifts of impossible strength, knowledge, and immortality, all bought with the currency of damnation. The desperate and wrathful, and the broken and the damned hear their call and answer, believing they have found escape, purpose, or glory. But there is no escape. There is only servitude, only oblivion, only the cold grasp of chaos. Once the Emperor sought to smother these horrors, to strangle belief itself, and to starve the dark gods of their prey. He imposed his imperial truth, a shroud of ignorance, believing that only by silencing faith could mankind be shielded from damnation. But faith cannot be silenced forever. Belief festers in the shadow, in whispered prayers, in desperate pleas, and where belief lingers, the dark gods wait. They have always waited, for chaos is eternal. Chaos is patient. Chaos will have its due. I think about like all the different blessings and gifts that chaos has to offer you. They come whispering to you in your darkest of times, and they offer you whatever your heart's desire is. I wonder how many of us could really impose, or like how many would succumb to it. Like that they start offering you ways off your weird planet that you found yourself born into. All you gotta do is just burn a neighboring village, whatever crazy little thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the classic trope of selling your soul to the devil for success, right? Like, this is, yeah, it's
Jordan's done it. Christian's done it.
it's always going to be more.
Mark's about to do it.
I've done it a few times actually. Yeah.
You don't have that many souls, Mark. Oh, you're trading other people's souls now. I see.
You could sell your soul to multiple chaos gods and just lie to them and tell them you haven't sold your soul
Yeah, exactly.
yet. So.
It's not how that works.
Yeah, it's like a chaotic pyramid
Yeah.
scheme.
Listen, the contracts all fill in when I die. So until then, I'm free and clear. I can make all these pacts, and then at the end, they can come and fight for my soul. At that point, you know.
Oh, yeah, you're bringing chaos to the chaos gods. I like it.
Does that elevate you to godhood too?
I think so.
One thing you said there, Mark, too, I wanted to touch on is, yeah, it does explain too why the Emperor was so like anti-religion in the Great Crusade. Like it was his goal to cut off and sever the Immaterium. He knew it was there. He knew it was dangerous, and he wanted to use ignorance as a shield for humanity. Obviously, that didn't work out as planned, and even kind of backfired. So now it's a question of like, will maybe leaning into the warp and praying to the Emperor and hopefully having the Emperor ascend and using chaos almost again, or the powers of the warp against the warp, versus the alternative, which was to cut it off completely.
Yeah, because like even going on that, like there was like the Emperor had plans upon plans, and there was like steps to these plans, and that was a step. Yeah, okay, so make sure humans don't know about chaos. Ignorance is bliss type situation. But eventually, the Emperor did want them to turn into like a psychic race. But that never happened because I think it would have only happened after the Emperor opened up and fulfilled the Webway project. It's one thing to rely on psychic powers for, the odd thing here or there, moving crates or shooting fireballs, but it's another thing to rely on it for transportation around the galaxy.
Yeah, and like just so ubiquitously used, like every time you use it, there's a little bit of danger in it. So obviously, the more you do it, the more dangerous it becomes. And also, like humanity wasn't ready, right? Like they're little baby psychers; they don't know what they're doing. They can wield such destructive power and not even realize it. So humanity had to be brought to a place where it was capable of understanding.
And that could only happen when every last Xenos was dead. Only then could we have peace and understanding.
Bring back the Great Crusade. End of days. With the sundering of reality and the birth of the Great Rift at the end of the 41st millennium, the nightmares that have haunted existence since the dawn of time erupted with newfound ferocity. No longer mere shadows at the edges of perception, no longer confined to the whispers of the damned, demonkind surged forth in endless tides, their incursions ceaseless, their hunger boundless. This was the dawn of a new age, an age of slaughter and suffering, of war without end. The gaping wound in the fabric of real space became a gateway, a floodgate flung open. Another shot for you, Jordan. And the hosts of chaos poured forth. Mortals and demons alike, united in the service of the dark gods, descended upon the worlds of humanity, and the lesser species with unchecked cruelty, drowning them in horror, silencing their screams in the tides of chaos. You're going to get alcohol poisoning before the end of this.
Yeah.
Had the gods moved as one, had their will been singular and their purpose aligned, the reality itself would have been unmade, torn apart by all-consuming madness of the warp. There would be nothing but the endless dominion of the ruinous powers, the galaxy reshaped into their image, a realm of nightmare eternal. But they are chaos. They do not share. They do not kneel, even to one another. Each dark power turned upon the rift with its own hunger, seeking dominion not just over the wretched souls of the mortals, but over each other. One sought to burn, one to twist, one to corrupt, and one to indulge. And in their endless struggle, they allowed their prey to resist. So that kind of brings us to the great game. Like chaos is in its nature to obviously be chaotic, and if they could like unite towards a singular purpose, and that's what makes characters like Horus or Abaddon so powerful, that they can, they think they control chaos, but at least it gives chaos almost a united purpose at times. But 99.9% of the time, chaos is just fighting itself more than anything. And again, it's in its nature to fight itself, right? Like that is what makes chaos.
Yeah, and can you guys just before we go on, like get specific with me about what exactly the term the great game is? This like a competition between all the chaos gods? Like what's it referring to?
Yeah, we will get into it in a little bit, but the teaser would be think hungry hippos. But you got these 4 chaos gods.
Such a cool concept reduced to such a
and you got these balls in the middle,
That is a game.
and the four chaos gods are trying to chomp, and they're just these greedy, gluttonous hippos now. And the great game is who can eat the most souls, and then the game will
Okay.
get reset, and they'll play it again, and they'll keep playing endlessly. One thing I think about is, what do you guys think about like the D&D alignment, where it's like neutrality, chaotic good, lawful good. It has those kind of 9 categories: chaotic, neutral, lawful, evil.
Yeah. What about it?
So with chaos in 40K, especially older versions of 40K, the dark gods had some not chaotic necessarily attributes. Like Khorne had martial pride, or like courage. He wouldn't ever flee from battle.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Do you think that alignment D&D kind of fits into 40K's kind of? Can you transpose some of that onto the Chaos Gods, or is it pretty different?
Yeah, I don't know. I would want to do a more deeper dive. Like, I'm only vaguely familiar with the D&D alignment chart. Just off the cuff, I want to say
I think maybe let me like re-say the question, where it's like where they have different attributes, I suppose. So when we're going to that hungry hippo thing, like what is feeding Khorne? Well, he's got blood, skulls, that's feeding him a lot, violence, and then way down the list of soul kind of feeding is martial pride or courage, and that, so
Sure.
those different attributes maybe slotting them in, where like courage is like lawfully or chaotic lawful, almost, or chaotic good. Maybe we need to look at it more with somebody.
Yeah, I would move away from the alignment
Yeah.
chart and say like, and I would use the terms positive and negative loosely, because those two come with their own kind of baggage. But like, positive traits and negative traits, like you said, like courage and honor versus violence and bloodlust. But again, in this context, I wouldn't necessarily use positive or negative traits, but just it's easy for us to speak that way plainly. Did they remove that, or is that still canon? I always thought it was still...
No, I'm pretty sure that's kind of not it. Like, as we get further into the lore, there's a couple things that are shifting with the Chaos Gods. We know what happened to Slaanesh. It's got way more PG, way more marketable. We don't see nearly as many tits as we now do, unless it's in the Imperial Guard, because then every captain they release has tits on them. Seems like they're kind of pushing female models on us or something like that, in my opinion. But yeah, Khorne also, I think he's kind of not he doesn't have that same martial pride and stuff and courage, because the other thing is they're trying to also make the Imperium more good, and then therefore chaos more bad, like a little more definitive.
Yeah, and that goes into that positive negative alignments. I agree with you that that's kind of where they're going, and I think it was more of a question that they probably just stopped talking about it. So whether or not that decanonizes it versus outright saying like that's not how it works anymore.
Yeah.
But anyways, we got way off topic. I know you wanted to ask, like, what do you think the positive traits are of each Chaos God? Is that
essentially. And if it would kind of work well with that system, but I don't think it really would necessarily.
Not with the D&D system, but I think you could definitely just on their own. I think like for Tzeentch, I would definitely say things like, there's good in ambition, right? Like you don't want to be lazy and not do anything. For Nurgle,
I kind of looked at it. I listened to a podcast, and you just hear smart people talking. They kind of looked at the universe positive and negative is if it increases entropy or decreases entropy. So if it increases like kind of lifespan of something, or decreases it, it's kind of a good way to.
Man, that's gonna set me off on a whole other tangent that I would go down. But that could be like, obviously if you're talking with chaos, obviously being tied with entropy. But I don't know if...
But that's a different thing.
I don't know if I'd go... yeah. I don't know what you want me to answer now.
I'm just happy you're here is all, my friend.
We'll just talk about the end of days. The Imperium of Man, fractured and dying, now clings to a fragile defiance. Its tattered remnants rally behind the resurrected Primarch, Reboot Gilliman, and his reforged warriors, the Primaris Space Marines, children of a dead god, struggling against inevitability. The Imperium's doom is certain, yet still it fights. The Eldari, ancient and withering, refuse to submit, desperately clawing to a fate to forestall their extinction. The Necrons, hollow echoes of their former empire, seek to deny chaos its prize. Standing as defiant wardens of an uncaring reality, and the upstart Tau, blind in their arrogance, now begin to peer into the abyss, daring to comprehend that which should never be understood. The orcs, those mindless savages, merely revel in the carnage, seeing only the endless promise of battle, heedless of what they face. And the Tyranids, creatures of hunger, unshaped by the tides of the warp, see the demons for what they are, invaders, threats to the feast that awaits. They do not cower, nor do they kneel. They seek only to devour. And so the great war rages on. Chaos, inevitable, unstoppable, tears at the fabric of existence, seeking to consume all, even itself. The galaxy is locked in its death throes, and the dark gods watch with amusement. For there is no peace, no salvation, no hope, only war, only chaos.
I love all the different relationships all the races have,
Uh,
from the town not having really anything to, the Tyranid. So I want to focus in for a hot second here. And we've talked about the Chaos Gods and like how localized are they? Are they a Milky Way galaxy only entity? Does the warp extend beyond the Milky Way into other universes? And I've kind of been looking at the hive mind after doing a couple episodes, more and more like a chaos entity from another universe. They're just some bug nids in some other universe, slowly started eating stuff, develop, evolve, boom, 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 massed enough that they developed the hive mind, their own kind of warp entity. They conquered that whole galaxy, and now this like warp entity, a chaos god, the Tyranid god, the hive mind, is now coming from an alternate universe, or not alternate, but next door universe.
Yeah. Are you? Do you mean galaxy and universe?
Sorry,
Or using that interchangeably?
when I say galaxy, I mean Milky
Yeah,
Way,
because
and Tyranids from another universe, not from another, or it's from another galaxy. I mean, yeah, sorry,
no, you mean
yeah,
galaxy. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Is it
yeah.
intergalactic? Because like, yeah,
I would have assumed that the warp exists everywhere in the physical material universe, but that was never a question I've actually honestly really asked myself, if it
Yeah,
was
like
like
if
more
the
localized.
the warp is an ocean, a sea, and then you could spread out that ocean far across the galactic map into other galaxies, and Nurgle might only have control over this like little tidal pool over here, and the hive mind might have this huge portion of the warp ocean in these different galaxies that are feeding it.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
uh, me. Hmm. I definitely think it's intergalactic. Um, but there's also such advances,
um,
like you said, those little pools. Like there's such massive void gaps in it that like chaos does need the material world to feed it, so it's like power diminishes between galactic pools maybe, but I don't see why they couldn't influence other places. Now like what you said, like if there's a galaxy completely consumed by the Tyranids, maybe there is no necessarily chaos presence there because it's all singular in purpose now. It's all been devoid of any life other than Tyranid life. And even if they probably
yeah.
just all moved on anyways, in which case again it becomes like another
Yeah, like
dead
how
spot.
how long or how many Tyranids would
But,
you need to make before you kind of spawn a reaction in the warp? That hunger reaction. And that god is slowly evolving. Like
yeah,
the gods kind of do evolve, maybe Khorne when he was first kind of birthed, he was a little more martial pride, but as in 40k, no, it's blood and skulls. And maybe the hive mind was more hunger when it first kind of came onto the warp presence scene. Yeah, and
scene.
now it's definitely like acquiring a couple more personalities. We see when it attacks Ball and, a couple of times.
Yeah, it could be. There's also this weird kind of paradox with Chaos too, where like Chaos clearly has like a beginning point and an evolution to it. Like with the birth of Slaanesh is very obvious, but also at the same time, Chaos has always existed, right? So it's that like,
yeah, it exists outside of time. Like, time happens and you can go through it. So once it
exactly,
happens,
right?
it's happened, and yeah.
It has always been kind of thing. So that's where it's like, maybe it doesn't need a concrete explanation. You just kind of like, you just got to believe in your heart.
Good enough for me.
I do think, and I don't know if there's anything to this though, but even like with the chaos gods, they hunger for souls. They're ultimately driven by hunger. That isn't so unlike the Tyranids, who hunger as well, maybe not for souls, but they are kind of driven by a similar motivation. So you wonder, like, it kind of makes you wonder if there's like an opening in the story to make some sort of chaos connection with the Tyranids, but I don't know what it would be, because it seems they're so like not spiritually inclined in any way, shape, or form.
Well, yeah, and you also need that kind of like sentience element as well. Like, is Khorne empowered by a cougar just killing its prey in the mountains with no one around, right? Like, does that drive Khorne, or does there need to be some kind of intentionality? And of course,
is that a confession? Can we just go back to the cougar killing incident? Did you just confess?
I didn't kill a cougar. I said if a cougar killed something else. Yeah. If a man kills a cougar in the woods, is it a crime?
Does anyone hear the cougar scream?
Asking for a friend. Yeah. But no, like, yeah, and then the other aspect is, again, that spiritual connection, right? Like, how bright are they in the warp? When an Eldar does something, it has massive more echoes than if a Tau did something, right? And then some species who have no presence at all.
I mean, it seems like consciousness definitely has some interplay with the warp. And yeah, like if you're a species that is a hive mind, obviously each individual Tyranid creature
it's
like doesn't really have a consciousness.
No, because Tyranid, or it's not Tyranid, sorry, Tau are highly conscious, highly aware.
No.
Yet no. Yeah.
But they have little souls. Little tiny souls.
No grande.
Yeah. So, and that's what I was saying. Like, that's why, like, I don't know. And like in Animal, right? Like they might have some presence in the warp, but do they? And how strong is it if they're just acting on instinct? I don't know if it's ever really.
Here's an interesting thought. Okay, so Tau, like if the warp is just a reflection of the emotions, and Tau are kind of like based off this like Japanese weeb samurai controlled like emotionless like Zen, you think that's a nice little tie-in point, intentional? Because ultimately, like, that's all it is. Like, if you are Zen and you're not doing anything in anger, or you're not doing anything in any emotion at all, and you're just doing things, then
you're dispassionate.
Yeah.
If you act dispassionately, I certainly think that was a thematic inclusion. I think they could I don't think it's explicitly written, but I think it's like assumed. But then again, does that mean though that a Tau that does lose control, suddenly their soul burns brighter? Like, you would have to account for that, and I don't know that it exists anywhere.
Well, that's sure, for sure, you're right. And it could have just like a little cap where it's like it only gives it 1% more if he's angry, so it's still meaningless. But
sure. Yeah, it's still a tiny little soul, but yes, slightly brighter.
Huh?
Yeah, it could be. I don't know unless it's like, I try to stick close to canon.
These are all questions we can ask when we die. Yeah, exactly. A lot of questions will be answered. This guy killed a lot of chickens and has a chicken skull mound in his backyard. Khorne's favorite champion.
And their souls are consumed by the warp and chaos.
Just waiting to
especially
ascend.
Mark.
KFC, you have to beat KFC, Mark. That's a really.
I'm hoping for wings for sure, but I also wouldn't mind like a dolphin tail, because in my environment that'd be pretty neat. But
little known fact, the K in KFC is actually for Khorne. Khorne fried chicken.
Fried with his rage. All right, let's get into the dark gods. The chaos gods are the sovereign lords of the Immaterium. the architects of nightmare, the eternal forces that shape reality's undoing. From the churning madness of the warp, their influence stretches like grasping talons into the material realm, distorting, corrupting, and consuming all in their wake. They are the masters of ruin, the true gods of the cosmos, and among them, four reign supreme. Khorne, the blood god, the lord of slaughter, whose throne is built upon the bones of the slain, and whose hunger for war is never sated. Nurgle, the plague father, the grandfather of rot, who bestows the blessings of despair and endless decay upon his faithful. Tzeentch, how do you guys say it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we've all been saying that word together since we were like fucking 18 or something. So I know we get grief a lot about how to say that one. What are some variations? Do you guys know?
Yeah, I've always said. I just said it how you said it.
Tzeentch,
Tzeentch.
Tzeentch,
Yeah, that would have.
Tzeentch.
My other one is
Tzeentch.
I do read
Tzeentch.
it Tzeentch, but I've just always heard it say
Yeah,
Tzeentch. So
yeah.
I
Tzeentch, the architect of fate,
say
the
Tzeentch.
great deceiver, whose sorcery twists time and destiny to serve his unknowable schemes. And Slaanesh, the dark prince, the lord of excess, whose whispered temptations ensnare the souls of mortals in an endless spiral of indulgence and agony. Yet chaos is never whole, for within it lies division, treachery, and betrayal. There exists another, a nameless horror lurking in the void. Malice, the embodiment of chaos turning upon itself, a black wound in the fabric of madness. He strikes at his kin with unrelenting spite, yet there is no friend to the yet he is no friend to the wretched Imperium, nor to any who draw breath. Though though they are ever at war with each other, ever hungry for domination, the dark gods are not without purpose. When their hatreds align, when their whispers weave together in a single hymn of destruction, they become something greater. Chaos undivided. The storm that seeks to drown the feeble lights of order. The tides that would see the Imperium of Man and its corpse god ruler torn asunder. Their power is drawn from the minds of mortal, from the ceaseless turmoil of all who feel, think, and suffer. Okay, well, there's a couple more emotions. Thinking also can affect it. Suffering, I guess, also affects it. So it's not just emotions. Um, you know.
But says something that does not feel suffer.
We'll find out later this episode.
Shut up! I'm gonna torture you later.
Every pang of every rage, every moment of despair, every act of madness feeds the unholy pantheon, swelling their dominion over the immaterium. Even the misguided worship of the lesser gods, those dead echoes of Eldari, the hollow myth of the Emperor of Mankind, only delays the inevitable. Belief shapes the warp, and in the end, all roads lead to chaos. Yet the ruinous powers are not bound to their dominion. Through the minds of the cursed, through the vessels of the damned, they reached into the material world, their touch felt in the whispers of sorcerers, in the ravings of possessed, and in the gibbering horrors that spill forth from the veil of that is torn. They sculpt their own children from the raw madness of the warp, demons, etched of their own boundless will, the heralds of the gods themselves. Chaos is eternal, chaos is inevitable, and in the end, all shall bow and all shall burn. Chaos Undivided.
That's cool.
What do you think of this kind of concept of like, for a while there, Chaos Undivided kind of meant not one of the aligned gods. It was kind of just the powers of the warp, kind of. Also, at times, Chaos Undivided couldn't really have powers like that. There's also times now where Chaos Undivided could be Khorne and Tzeentch teaming together and powering up one individual to become a demon prince, and then that guy is an undivided, where it's like he's technically blessed by two and not just one. What do you guys kind of think? How do you feel about where the like undivided alignment lies, or like how you break that down?
I think in practical terms, it could fit both groups. Which it would be interesting if they came up with a different name for one or the other. So yeah, you have almost like a quote unquote neutral chaos, right? That's just chaos as it is, not aligned to any god. And then mixed alignment. Someone like, Abaddon or Horus would, be empowered by all four chaos gods. So I think both examples clearly exist. You have things like are they Furies? Like unaligned demons? Yeah. So like those clearly exist and they don't really have an allegiance to any god. And then you have like factions like we talked about, Portorabo. He's technically chaos undivided, but he shouldn't really have an alignment to any god, even though we talked about the whole demon prince business.
Yeah, like that's definitely that second one where it's like you got chaos divided, which is one god, chaos undivided, which is multiple gods, and then that third category that needs a good ringer for a name.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think they should. I like both
Yeah.
clearly exist, but I think they should be separated out conceptually because they're both right now under the umbrella of undivided. But one could be called something else to make it more clear. Because like Black Legion is obviously undivided also, but they wield the
What
power of all
about
four
Chaos
gods.
Unbound?
Like,
is that a good one?
I like that. Yeah, that'd be sick.
Okay, now we're talking. Yeah, so then Proto-Rabble would be like a demon prince of chaos unbound.
Yeah, not bound to any god.
Yeah, but still has powers of the warp and like has ascended and very cool. All right, so now when I go start a Chaos Unbound army, I can go to Merlin Miniatures, use promo code Lorehammer, buy myself some minis,
Start
that cycle, start it over, 15% off if you use the mailing list.
It's a natural upgrade.
I think this is the last time they're sponsoring an episode, actually. Maybe not the last time, but this is all we did with them, and we hope to do it again with them. I enjoyed reading for them, and I hope you guys all use their mini sites. Why the heck not? You're buying minis online anyways. Do me a solid.
Yeah.
That's all. I love it,
and
man.
Support them.
I'm gonna get so many minis. I get 10% of the minis you guys buy. That's the loop. It's not the monies, it's the minis.
Yeah, they just send you miniatures. But it doesn't matter what faction they are. They just send it to you.
You open your tactical box and there's like one guy missing. You're like, fuck, 9 tactical marines. Mark has one now.
You take 10. You get like
Merlin minis.
You order a demon prince and one arm is missing. It's a Mark Spitz box now. Pay you.
Call it a tithe, an imperial tithe.
Back on topic. We're going to break down each of the gods one by one. So let's get into Tzeentch, or also pronounced as Mark, or also pronounced. Man, we should have asked Rick Priestley how to pronounce it. I get like almost like an Aztec vibe from how it's spelled, but I don't know what the source for the name comes from.
You and him ended up talking for like an hour after the interview. I had to run, but how was that? Did you anything else he revealed? Because there's some super sweet stuff he said in that episode that just kind of like vindication, validation. That's why that's that way.
Yeah, no, I not much about Warhammer actually. We talked a lot about a bunch of other like more history and historical miniatures and stuff. He's obviously really big into history, right? So I wish we had, like, honestly, I could do a whole other interview with the guy. We could talk forever, but let's get into Tzeentch. Tzeentch, the changer of ways, the architect of fate, the master of fortune, the great sorcerer. He is the endless storm of change, the whisper behind every scheme, the flickering light of impossible knowledge that lures the ambitious to their doom. He is the ceaseless tide of transformation, shaping reality with every thought, every lie, every twist of fate. His skin writhes with ever-shifting faces, each sneering, leering, whispering half-truths and contradictions, weaving a web of deception so vast that even the gods themselves cannot perceive its limits. Tzeentch is the keeper of secrets. Bad, it's true, but poorly named. The Lord of Magic, the grand manipulator of destiny itself. His words slither into the minds of the desperate and cunning alike. Those who crave power, who yearn to twist the world to their design. Politicians, sorcerers, seers, and prophets all dance upon the unseen strings of his will.
Politicians are specifically named. It's not like any electrician is bound to chaos gods. Just pointed that out.
Lawyers, I would also throw in with this group as well.
Yes.
Believing they wield control when in truth they are but pieces in an endless game played for its own sake. Every promise he whispers, every boon he bestows is but another step deeper into his labyrinthine plots. To seek understanding of Tzeentch is to court madness, for there is no ultimate revelation, no final truth. His designs have no end, for an end would be stagnation, and stagnation is anathema to the great conspirator. He does not desire victory, only movement, only endless spiraling change on ever-churning sea of deception and ambition with no shore in sight. The architect of fate cannot be unraveled, for he is the weaver of all threads, the hand behind every move to chase his will, to lose oneself in an infinite game where every path leads only to further uncertainty. There is no end, only change. Yeah. A couple of thoughts on Mr. Tzeentch. Well, actually, first question for all the gods. There's no official depictions of them, is there? I know there's some really popular fan art that kind of gets shared around as like official, but I don't think there's ever actually been depictions of the gods themselves. They're greater demons.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm just trying to like actually picture whole codexes and like remembering that artwork in there. And yeah, you
I
might
like
be
how
right.
you're mentally
It's odd.
Rolodexing through every page of every codex
Yeah,
you've ever
like
read.
okay, yeah, include the
Yeah.
white dwarves in there. Oh yeah, I turned that one into that collage one point.
Yeah, and like I said, I know there is some really popular fan work out there that people keep using and almost like, and it looks official. It's really well done, but I don't think that there's any real official depiction of the gods. Or can there be even, especially for one that changes his ways and changes probably his appearance.
We'll get back to this god in the next episode. But it's the oldest god rumored to be. And you can kind of see why, you know, like change at the beginning of time, there's change and motion and, you know, conflict, and even from microorganisms, single cells kind of competing and changing. Like it's kind of the first step.
Yeah.
Ambition.
If you could make a depiction of a chaos god, how would you do Nurgle? Just like a big giant
Just take a picture.
shit, or
Yeah.
just something absolutely disgusting, like the most filthy abomination. So Nurgle, the Lord of Decay, the grandfather of pestilence, the master of rot, the eternal monarch of corruption. He is the joyous harbinger of entropy, the relentless hand that guides all flesh to ruin. Every cough, every withering limb, every festering wound is a hymn sung to his name. It's just so funny. Okay. A blessing bestowed upon the mortal plane. The air itself quivers with his presence, thick with the rancid stench of decay, a miasma of inevitability that seeps into all things. His bloated form is a monument to degradation, his flesh sloughing away in great necrotic folds, his vast distended belly spilling forth his chittering.
Say the script. Say it, Jordan.
It's hard not to laugh and read this. It's just, it's so over the top. It's great. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, I'll start from the air itself quivers with his presence, thick with the rancid stench of decay, miasma of inevitability that steeps into all things. His bloated form is a monument to degradation, his flesh sloughing away in great necrotic folds, his vast distended belly spilling forth his chittering, giggling progeny. His beloved Nurglings, who set up the foul humors that seep from his endless weeping shores. The grandfather Nurgle. Despair is the gateway to acceptance and suffering, but the road is his loving embrace. It is not the horror that he offers, but solace, a refuge from the agony of existence, an escape from the gnawing fear of death. His followers do not shrink from his gifts, they cherish them, reveling in their swollen, rotting forms, free from pain, free from fear, unshackled from the illusion of mortal frailty. His touch is a promise of eternity, a preservation, not of beauty, but of petruscence, an unending cycle of rot that defies the cold grip of the grave. and so the universe shall fester and boil in his name. For all things decay, all things fall in ruin, and all things in time shall kneel before the
You
plague
can just see the
lord,
wounds
benevolent
opening in
grasp.
Jordan's face as he
I hope you can
preaches.
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah, I feel like I was walking downtown
hope you-
in a dark alley and somebody grabbed me and started yelling this at me. Ah, Jordan!
I hope you could see like the spit and moisture just
Well, you can if you
foaming out of my
subscribe to the
mouth as
Patreon. You can
I
watch Jordan slowly descend to Nurgle's grip.
yeah.
His wretched form taking shape on screen.
So Mark, a couple of
Absolutely.
things. One, this actually shows a good the Chaos Gods kind of have their almost like direct rivals. So like Nurgle and Tzeentch are almost like opposites, right? Tzeentch is all about change, Nurgle is about stagnation. And you'll see the same between kind of Khorne and Slaanesh. They kind of have these like specific rivalries between them. You can see why, because obviously their natures are very much in conflict. That was the first point I wanted to make, and the other point is escaping me. But if you have a comment on that,
Yeah, definitely. They definitely have their rivals for sure. They also, does that mean they have their preferred? Like, Nurgle, does he like Khorne and Slaanesh?
I think we should do like a political compass of the four chaos gods,
which god are
where
you
you do like
aligned?
a
Yeah.
questionnaire and which chaos
Yeah.
god. Yeah.
Yeah, I lean heavily in Slaanesh on most of those ones.
Not surprised. I am not
But
surprised. But there's a little bit of Tzeentchness to you
no.
as well. Plots and schemes.
Yeah. No more Khorne in me. The island has mellowed me out unless you're a chicken, in which case it's back to Slaanesh.
The core. Oh my god. What are you doing to those chickens?
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to bring up too was so kind of leading back to that question you asked a lot earlier about like the positive attributes. And this is why like for Nurgle it's still very much part of his character. The joy and acceptance of death part of it is kind of like that positive attribute to Nurgle. That kind of like acceptance of fates. And that still exists it's very plain. Like even on the Nurgle models, they always are kind of like working in those like smiles and like grandfather Nurgle, like a very loving kind of angle to them.
Well, like when you die as a mortal and you serve Nurgle, that's like the next form of rebirth and the next life cycle, and like so even that you carry on, in death there's life.
And that's exactly what I was going to point to is like that life component is also part of Nurgle as well, like and how death brings forth new life, not just like even in nature, right? Like your rotting corpse feeds the scavengers, and the decay of your body like gives life to mushrooms and other things that grow on your bloating carcass. And so I think it's still like an unspoken element, or like I would still argue that those elements probably still exist, unless again there's some new canon that explicitly denies it.
Sure.
And I do agree with you. Like I said, like thematically, I do believe that GW is working more into the binary system of the Imperium good guys, Chaos bad guys. But I think those elements still exist, and I guess for the other gods,
yeah, like it would be dials,
yeah,
like that dial has been turned down, for
exactly.
sure. But still there.
Yeah, and I was just gonna give like the positive attributes that I feel for the other gods, but maybe I'll just say them as we go through each god. But I think for Tzeentch, I mentioned that like definitely like positive ambition would be part of his. Being like thinking ahead and scheming isn't always a negative thing. Someone who thinks ahead is probably like a good planner. Prophecy is a weird one because prophecy can be good. Like you obviously have a good advantage if you know what the future holds. But I think in Tzeentch, most cases are more of like either a monkey paw situation where like, oh yeah, you can see the future, but it's always negative or something like that. Or almost like a Cassandra type thing where you could see the future and no one believes you, right? Stuff like that. So, but I'll mention the other one. I guess Slaanesh is really the only one we haven't really touched on yet, but I'll save it for then.
Yeah. Going way back to the beginning of what do these gods look like? Nurgle looks actually like the greater demons. What are they called? The big ones.
Great unclean ones.
The greater demons. Great unclean ones. Thank you. Yeah, they actually look the most comparable to what Nurgle actually looks like. So there's a fun little fact for you.
That's
Fat.
mentioned.
Yeah, no, that is canon. That is not a joke. Like of all the greater demons, the great unclean ones.
He's explicitly said to look the most. Yeah.
Since we're doing accents, I love accents. I'll play along. I'm doing Khorne,
no.
so I'm gonna picture him in a Mexican wrestling mask. He's a kind of. And in this corner, we got Khorne, the Lord of Skulls, the Blood God, the
He's a
Master of
luchador.
Slaughter and everything wrathful. He is a war incarnate, murder made manifest. Yeah, that's just too much, though. I have a tough enough time reading as it is, so. A ceaseless storm of rage and carnage who bellows shake the very foundations of reality. Upon his great brass throne, towering above the mountain of skulls, the grinning remnants of the countless slain, he watches, uh, exultant. What is that fucking word? Exultant. See what I mean? Dumb bitch. He watches, exultant, as the rivers of blood carve their path through the shattered bones of the fallen. Every corpse, every severed head, every battlefield soaked in the crimson is a hymn to his boundless fury. Khorne is the embodiment of absolute, unthinking violence, a force that knows no allegiance, no restraint. His wrath does not discriminate, for friend and foe alike must fall beneath the relentless tide of slaughter. To follow Khorne is to abandon all else, to become a vessel of fury, a warrior whose only purpose is to kill and kill again. His champions wield steel and fire, never to taint their might with the craven sorcery of cowards. For Khorne despises magic and loathes the trickery of the deceiver Tzeentch. Men call upon Khorne to grant them power, the strength to crush their foes, to shatter their enemies, to extract vengeance bathed in blood. But the truth, known only to those who wholly consumed by his will, is far simpler, far darker. Khorne does not grant power for glory. He does not reward victory with honor. He desires only death, endless and eternal, and unceasing massacre that stretches across the stars. Blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. The slaughter will never end. Man, of all the fucking chaos gods saying, I think blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull thrones is the most metal. I think it's also the most well known. Like I try to think of the other gods one, and nothing is as fucking hard hitting, and it's like, what are you gonna do with my body and blood? Fuck.
What, you mean the grandfather of pestilence, the master of rot, the eternal monarch of corruption? Is it good enough for you, Mark?
No, that will haunt me tonight for sure, but hopefully in the morning I'll forget all about you.
Okay.
Yikes. Yeah, I'm trying to picture you're definitely just a homeless person trying to grab me and tell me about the end of the
With
world.
his nubby little hands.
That voice. Yeah, so filthy. Yeah, Khorne's pretty cool. Not much to him. He's just violence, man. Like
I mean, we did talk earlier about that like noble aspect, whether or not that's still there or not, but that did exist at some point.
Yeah, we all got a little violence in us.
Yeah.
I mean, he seems like the most Warhammer, if you will, of the gods.
You don't say.
Yeah.
I was gonna comment on Khorne's greater demons, but maybe we'll save that for later. Okay, Slaanesh. Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, the master of excess, the serpent of sensation, the whisperer of forbidden desires, youngest of the ruinous powers, yet in many ways the most insidious. Slaanesh alone wears a mask of divine beauty, a radiance so perfect that it blinds the soul and binds the will. To behold the Prince of Pleasures, to know rapture beyond mortal comprehension, to drown in a siren's call from which there is no escape. Slaanesh is neither male nor female, but both, shifting and alluring in every form, each aspect sculpted to ensnare the mind and shatter all resistance. Those who gaze upon the Dark Prince are undone, their spirits unmade, their very being surrendered to the ecstasy of servitude. It is to Slaanesh that mortals turn when they seek to be adored, to be worshipped, to be desired above all others. The poet yearns for divine inspiration. The artist craves perfection. The warrior seeks the adulation of the masses. They all draw close, desperate for the gifts of Slaanesh to freely bestow. And yet the gifts of the Dark Prince are a poisoned chalice. What once thrilled the senses soon becomes mundane. What once stirred the heart grows dull. Ever hungrier, ever thirstier, the followers of Slaanesh spiral deeper into indulgence, seeking ever greater heights of ecstasy, ever darker depths of depravity, until at last nothing is forbidden, no act too obscene, no pleasure too extreme. For Slaanesh does not merely grant desire, Slaanesh is desire incarnate, an endless hunger, a thirst that can never be quenched. Those who fall into the Dark Prince's embrace are doomed to chase a perfection that forever dances just beyond their grasp, lost in rapture that will never, ever end.
And we got our second version in the chat. Welcome, Ursads. Only fashionably late to the recording, but I think he might be in Japan, so maybe it's the 15th for him, but the rest of us are hanging in. And that means our boy Liar has a friend in the chat room, so that's always nice to join us as we talk about Slaanesh on this glorious day.
I told you Valentine's Day is not about Slaanesh. Slaanesh comes at night, Valentine's Day night, when everyone's locked up in their dungeons waiting to be disciplined for being naughty boys.
Okay.
That's not how you guys celebrate Valentine's Day?
It is now. It sounds like a fucking hell of a way to do it.
Our favorite goddess Slaanesh. What I was struggling to think of a positive attribute to Slaanesh. The only thing that I could even remotely come close to is something about passion. Like, passion's not always bad. Sometimes it's good to be passionate about your artwork, but I don't know if that really captures Slaanesh.
What about even like beauty too? Would Slaanesh not invoke beauty?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that would be an aspect. Actually, kind of going back to the passion thing, I was thinking like that pursuit of perfection, especially when we talked about it in our Fulgrim episodes. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It does become bad, obviously, when you let it take over. But you do kind of need like a passion, or like and again, like not just sexual, but like with other things too. Like just being passionate about things makes you want to do better, to try harder, to, to achieve more,
Something
right?
to look forward
exactly.
to.
To be good at your craft, right?
Sure.
Like those things are not inherently bad. They can become bad if they're all consuming, which is definitely the road of Slaanesh, but at least those would be also positive attributes.
Yeah.
To me, Slaanesh like really is though the sort of it could be just a avatar for like addiction. It's like if you just in our real world just replace Slaanesh with addiction, it kind of fits, with the description. But
fits very well.
Yeah. And I mean
and that's why I kind of always like it, because like I'm not addicted to like any substances or any except for that plastic crack, but yeah, like I like Slaanesh for the excess, which could be a good thing. Like, what if you have excessive food? Now you don't have to worry about starving to get to death, or excessive resources. Maybe is a better way to say that. But
yeah, money can buy you anything.
No,
like you'll never have need or want.
But then, yeah, like you said, it's that dark path where now all of a sudden you're buying.
And now you're in debt, crippling debt, and you don't need all the things anymore that you get. Why are you buying a yacht? You don't need a yacht.
And you have 4 starving kids at home, so you need to join the Patreon now, otherwise.
Slaanesh has taken me. Kind of going back to Jordan's like addiction thing. Like, obviously, for those who are familiar with it, and maybe those that aren't, like, oftentimes too, it's that like chasing that high, right? Like, your brain gets used to a certain like flood of endorphins or whatever other chemicals that it needs more and more to even feel like it did the first time or the last time. So that's why you're always kind of.
And that's what it feels like drinking Corona.
Are we doing
even better than that?
Are we doing an anti-alcohol ad too, Mark? Did you get funded by MAD or something?
Yeah.
But yeah,
In any case, go ahead, Christian.
it's also not just drugs too. Like that endorphin rush or that cycle of addiction can come from lots of other things too, like porn, video games, like whatever it is. Like, and that
Doing one too many episodes of
you guys
Warhammer
got
a
to slow
week.
down, man. If you're doing more than 5 a week, that's too much.
Oh, so I could still got room for improvement then. I'm only
Yeah, if you're only
halfway
doing 2 or
there.
3, that's fine. Just don't go over 5. Most doctors recommend.
Okay. Oh, we got somebody else to the chat. Welcome, our fellow virgin incel, Jack Kober. Why aren't you with your girlfriend, we all wonder, on Valentine's Day? Why are you here with 3 dudes instead of a woman?
Indeed.
Indeed.
So shall we get into the realms of the dark gods of chaos? They are twisted, ever-shifting landscapes that exist beyond the veil of reality. In the immaterium, each a manifestation of their creator's darkest desires, fears, and obsessions. These domains are formed by the raw, unfiltered energies of the warp, shaped and sustained by the will of their patrons, whose power is both the foundation and the lifeblood of these realms. Each god's domain mirrors their chaotic essence. Khorne's realm is a blood-soaked fortress of rage and violence. Tzeentch's a labyrinth of ever-changing magic and deceit. Nurgle's a decaying paradise of death and decay, and Slaanesh's a palace of indulgence and excess. These realms are maintained by the ceaseless flow of psychic energy, fed by the emotions and actions of mortals, who inadvertently empower the dark gods through their suffering, lust, and madness. These places exist in a constant state of flux, constantly reshaped by the gods' whims and ceaseless struggles of their demonic legions, each realm a reflection of its patron's influence over the universe, a realm born from the heart of chaos, where nothing is permanent and everything is subject to the will of the gods themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. The realms are cool, man. We'll get into each one here. Yeah, they're fun little areas and how they manifest. It makes me want to kind of explore what other kind of realms look like, and maybe we'll do that later. But we'll start with the realm of blood, and that's the fortress of Khorne, and that's the realm of the blood god. The fortress of Khorne stands as a towering testament to the will of the blood god, an eternal monument to unrelenting fury and bloodshed. Its very foundations are forged from the carcasses of those who dared to defy him. The ground is soaked in the lifeblood of slaughter. The air is thick with the scent of violence, echoing with Khorne's deafening roars and the relentless clashing of weapons, as if the realm itself hungers for war. In this blighted place, there is only endless cacophony of battle and the savage screams of those who die in Khorne's name. There is no mere realm. This is no mere realm. It is the very heartbeat of rage itself, where the bloodlust of the mighty Khorne pulses eternally. Yeah, I wondered if just going back to the Chaos Gods, I wonder if the reason why we don't see as much martial pride is as these other rage kind of develops, it just gets so big it eats the other ones.
Yeah, drowns out the positive.
It just drowns it out. They really just don't have the even in this place, we'll get into it on Khorne's episode. There's no memorial hall for champions or something like that, where Khorne honors martial pride or honors his servants. There's no place like that there.
Yeah, and it could be cool if there was this dichotomy of really tight regimented warfare and romanticized warfare where people sing songs. Ooh, and the heroes and stuff, and then the reality of warfare, bloody trenches, screams, blood, just death, and just pointlessness, right? I kind of like the idea of the Chaos Gods evolving and maybe some of the aspects becoming more powerful in them as a reflection of reality. But right, next realm, the realm of Changer of Ways. The maze of Tzeentch, known in whispers as the Crystal Labyrinth, is the twisted, ever-changing domain of the Changer of Ways. Here, the very fabric of reality bends and warps beneath the weight of deceit and manipulation. This labyrinth is a creation of pure magic, woven from the intricate strands of sorcery and conspiracy, where every corner hides yet another scheme within a scheme. It is a realm designed to confuse and torment, a place where all who wander are doomed to see all 9 dimensions at once, their minds fraying under the weight of impossible truths. Here, Tzeentch's endless machinations are enacted, shifting like the sands of time, and those foolish enough to traverse it become lost in an eternity of uncertainty and folly. You are now entering the scary door. The Twilight Zone, yeah.
Yeah, what if you just go into all these realms and it's actually just like a demented theme park and you're forced to take?
Ooh. Yeah, that would be a fun theme park, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Anyways,
go to Khorne's and you're doing duck hunt with real rifles, shooting real ducks.
I don't want to go to the grandfather Nurgle's realm.
oh, you're
Smells so
coming.
bad. You're gonna drag me there?
Yeah. Instead of snow cones, use your imagination for Nurgle's realm.
Absolutely.
They're brown.
And speaking of the Garden of Nurgle, a festering
Oh
realm.
God, he's back.
But I it's actually hurting my voice, so I gotta go back to my regular voice. A festering realm birthed from decay is the domain of the plague god himself. It is not a garden of beauty, but a garden of corruption and ruin, a place where every disease and plague imaginable thrives, feeding on the souls of the weak and the desperate. The air is thick with the stench of rot, the very ground alive with the squelch of pestilence. Yet within this nightmare of decay, Nurgle's twisted love blooms, for his garden is not barren, but a paradise of suffering, where every form of death and affliction flourishes. Those who wander too deeply into his embrace find themselves trapped in this foul paradise forever, unable to escape the embrace of pestilence that promises only eternal suffering. It's funny, like his realm being described as a garden of all things, not like a sewer. um,
Gardens are just the
But,
sewers of nature, Jordan.
I guess that's true.
It is
You ain't
true.
wrong. But yeah, like I just picture his garden like not being full of like pinks and purples and oranges, but like greens and like dark greens and browns and like withering yellows and whatnot.
That's beautiful, isn't it?
Anything you touch is just gonna burst and pop
Yeah.
on you like his. Yeah.
Like giant Venus fly traps that are like actually monstrous.
We did a cool episode not too long ago about those entities in the warp, and I forgot what the plant was
Oh yeah, this
that was
corpse.
there. That
Oh
was,
yeah.
plant.
yeah. But they had a bunch of cool plants in this garden.
Yeah, we did
Yeah.
do that.
There's I think you probably talked about it too, is a Titan Arum in real life that smells like a corpse. Have you heard of that plant?
Oh.
It's huge.
It
It
no.
flowers so big and it reeks so bad. It's called the corpse flower. Anyways,
I want to smell it.
How do you confirm that it smells like a corpse? So have
actually,
you smelled
I
a corpse?
It's not great. It actually reminded me more of fish, to be honest
Okay.
with you. I couldn't eat seafood for a while after. Anyways,
Okay, that's weird. I hope it wasn't a loved one. The realm of the Prince of Pleasure here. We'll dive into that one headlong and feet wiggling.
Pants down.
Pants down, face down, ass up. That's the way we like to talk about the Prince of Pleasure, known also as the Palace of Pleasure, is a labyrinth of indulgence and excess, a world where every desire is a trap and every ecstasy is laced with torment. Divided into 6 domains, each one a twisted reflection of the desire and indulgence. This realm is a chaotic carousel of excess, each dominion playing upon the weakness of the soul. To reach the center of Slaanesh's realm, the Palace of Pleasure, one must pass through these 6 domains, each one more debasing and corrupting than the last. The circle of avidity seduces the traveler with the greed so deep that it consumes them entirely, ensuring that no soul who enters the domain can ever leave unchanged, twisted, and forever bound to Slaanesh's will. Here, in the heart of indulgence, every craving is met but at a price. One is paid with the very soul of the indulgent. I'm I'm really excited to go through this episode when we get there and learn about the 6 different levels of what you could fall to. And yeah, like gluttony's obviously on there. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like drugs, gluttony, fame, mirrors, looking at yourself, like self-indulgence. There's a cool, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, probably on another episode, but there's a cool Greek myth. Well, I don't know if it's cool, but like the story of Tantalus, where he's always thirsty and always hungry, but can't, like his hell that he's stuck in where he can't drink anything or he can't eat anything. So even like in the palace of pleasure, like you can see everything, you can have it all, but it still never satiates you. You're still never enough.
Yeah. We'll get to that one and we'll see which level we fall to. We all will at one of them. We can't get past them all. I hope we all just don't get to the sexual one together at the same time.
Oh no.
And we fall in that
And
one.
then turns out it's everyone's deepest desire because that's the one you obviously fall to, right?
The whole time. Moving on. The great game. We got to move on.
The great game. The Chaos Gods, eternal adversaries in their endless thirst for supremacy, wage a ceaseless war among themselves, a war that mirrors the blood-soaked strife of their followers across the material realm. This war is known as the Great Game, and it is a contest of corruption and domination, each god clawing, tearing, and scheming to claim the universe as their own. The warp is no mere haven for all the dark gods. It is their battleground, their crucible of power, the very arena where their eternal struggle unfolds. Since time itself began to unravel, the Chaos Gods have warred amongst themselves, their power ebbing and flowing in battle for dominion over the Immaterium. Each god strives to drown the others in a tide of violence, deceit, and death. Despite their vast and grotesque differences, the Chaos Gods are united in a single unrelenting desire: total unchallenged rule over the universe. There is no corner of existence they do not seek to claim as their own, no realm they are unwilling to pervert into their likeness. The very thought of sharing dominion with another is anathema to them, a foul insult to their boundless ambition. The energies of the warp are fickle, ever shifting in the tides of fate. As they surge and recede, so too does the power of each god, and their dominion warps with it. For eons, one god may reign supreme, devouring the energy of their foes, basking in the glory of dominance until their rivals strike in unison, tearing the reigning deity down, draining their strength, and watching as another god rises to take their place. This endless cycle, this unholy rhythm of rise and fall, plays out again and again through the annals of time. To think any Chaos God could ever truly claim ultimate victory is to entertain a madness beyond mortal comprehension. For even as one falls, another ascends. Still, their efforts never cease. Their insatiable hunger drives them to ever greater heights of corruption and ruin. When the gods themselves do battle, the very fabric of the Immaterium trembles. Warp storms churn across the galaxy, their unholy winds howling with fury of 1,000 storms. In the realm of chaos, vast legions of demons surge forth, twisted reflections of their creators, each one desperate to prove itself worthy in their master's favor. Within the lands of the gods, realms shake and collapse as the gods' domains collide in violent clash. Yes, like even in the warp, like it plays out in the material universe, but even in the warp, the gods are also fighting each other too, with their legions of demons.
Yeah, I picture like how does this work? Like, we picture the warp in physical reality, where there's actually Khorne sitting on his throne and he gets up off his throne and picks up his sword and his axe and goes and fights Nurgle. Sure, you can look at it that way, but I was kind of picturing it when you're reading this as those mobile phone games where it's like there's blue dots on the screen and there's red dots and they bounce off each other and consume and they change colors and it's like this endless tide until you can watch those things for hours and it won't ever actually finish. It might get down to one last green dot of Nurgle, but then it rebounces and gets all them kind of back up and right. And have you ever seen those apps? Just me.
Well, I never download those apps because obviously they're viruses, but yes, I've seen.
Yeah. Well, that's how I picture this working, and it's a fun visual because the Chaos Gods even have their preferred colors of blue, red, green, and I guess
pink, purple.
Yeah. Purple. Yeah, I'm like, what is Slaanesh's? Purple, pink. Sure, purple.
I do also wonder. I'm kind of curious because the writers of the Great Game, or the whoever was writing the lore for the Chaos Gods, um, the the Great Game is actually like a period in history in the 19th century where it was basically the British Empire and the Russian Empire were in this like race to conquer lands in basically Central Asia. And it was sort of one of the first really large proxy wars that was ever fought, because they never actually directly fought each other, but they were in this race to sort of conquer all of Central Asia. So think like Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, India, Pakistan, those areas. And like we sort of post hoc refer to the period as the Great Game. So I'm just wondering if there was any like inspiration from there, because it is like it's like an important thing in history, but I don't know where this, because it is like a very specific name.
Yeah, I kind of Yeah, I kind of almost even, go back even further to like British culture where you got like some aristocrats and they're going to go on a hunting trip with their single shot black powder gun. And, they're sitting up in their little armchair, feet up, and they're talking all, oh, yes, the great game, whether it be business or war or whatever they're talking about. I can picture them all talking about like the great game and the moving of pieces and just.
Okay,
Um,
so like more
it,
meta almost, how you're thinking about it.
Almost, but that's kind of just like, yeah, what I kind of picture when we kind of go down this path of British influence.
I just think of Hungry Hippos. I'm just kidding. No,
Now you can't stop thinking of that.
yeah, no, I think Jordan's is right. Because it's definitely those elements of like manipulation and like proxy war, but there's also real people also going to war, and like, yeah, I'm sure there's an element of history always tied to 40K.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting because it's like a very specific term
Title.
that's used, and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's never used anywhere else in like in the or we know historians don't refer to any other period as like a great game. So
Yeah.
I just thought it was kind of interesting.
Interesting.
Wanted to bring it up. Okay, so let's continue on the great game. These demons, imbued with the intellect and ambition, long for their creator's affection. They twist and plot, launching attacks against rival demons, each seeking to carve out a place of glory for itself in the service of its gods. The armies of the gods, limitless and ravenous, flow like tides from one territory to another, sweeping across the battlefield in an endless frenzied dance of conquest and defense. Deceit and treachery are the weapon of choice, as intrigue and feints lead forces into deadly traps, while in the shadows pacts are forged and enemies become allies, if only for a fleeting moment, united by a common cause, but forever at odds in the greater war. Okay, yeah, they were definitely taking it. Now that I'm reading this section of it, they're this is definitely exactly what like the Great Game was like if you
Yeah.
read it in history. Anyways, okay, which is interesting to sort of take inspiration from that for the Chaos Gods.
Maybe
All
he's
right,
saying
it is
something.
but a yeah, maybe it was just cool inspiration. Anyway, it is but a fleeting moment before the slightest glimmer of opportunity beckons, and the fragile lull in the endless war between the gods dissolves. The demons, ever ravenous, will abandon their temporary ceasefire, their hunger for destruction, driving them to once more tear into one another in a frenzy of violence and chaos. The immaterium itself quakes in an eternal dance of creation and destruction, shifting with every heartbeat, as vast stretches of its corrupted expanse are claimed and lost in the blink of an eye. When an army emerges victorious, their conquest is swift and inevitable, transforming the shattered remnants of their enemy's forces into the god's dominion, warping the raw entropy of the realm into a hideous reflection of their master's desire, a world of unrestrained madness. Yet sometimes an event, a being or an object arises in the material universe that captures the attention of all the chaos gods. This element, so potent, so significant, so capable of turning the tide of the great game, becomes the singular focus of the ruinous powers. In such moments, the eternal feuding halts for a time as they set aside their rivalries to claim or destroy what has come into being, or to bend to their will. The very galaxy trembles as they unite in a brief, unholy harmony, their combined might shaping the fates of worlds. Would that be like Chaos Undivided, sort of an example of it, you think? Like a scenario like this where they all join together?
Yeah, that would be a Chaos Undivided. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Not
For
Chaos
mankind,
Unbound.
yeah. For mankind, the greatest of such moments was the birth of the Emperor. The Chaos Gods, in a rare moment of unification, sought his ruin, beginning with the abduction of his infant Primarchs from Terra's sanctum, and culminating in the devastating spiritual corruption of half their number, igniting the flame of civil war and the Horus heresy. Such rarities are not without precedent in the realm of chaos. Other occasions have forced temporary alliances between the gods, black crusades of terrible promise, the birth or extinction of a race, or the unraveling of new threats to their dominion. The attention of the ruinous powers may shift, yet their lust for dominance is insatiable. Once their goal is achieved, their fleeting cooperation evaporates as they return to their eternal game. Deals are broken, alliances shattered, and the gods' dark ambition surges once more as one or all seeks to betray their rivals and seize ultimate power. The demonic legions march again, and their wars once more bleed into the mortal realms, the echo of their feuds reverberating through the galaxy like thunder.
The Great Game. Yeah, very cool. The Great Game, they've been playing it for a long time, millions of years. And the fun thing about the Great Game is it's the game that never really ends. You can keep playing it for all time, it appears. And yeah, Khorne might be the most powerful one apparently right now, but that's gonna wax and wane, and it's gonna be something else, and it will never end.
Yeah, it's also a cool mechanism to keep like the overwhelming power of chaos kind of at bay, because you can always come up with the excuses like, oh well, they're distracted with other things in the warp, so they don't have the singular focus in the material world right now. You see that previously with all the demon primarchs disappearing from 40k for so long. They get enraptured in the Great Game, and are working with their own gods to fight their own wars in the warp, and like are just unconcerned with the material world for a while until now.
Yeah.
Until GW needs to print some more money.
Hey, did you see today that new Forge World Angron model?
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Why does no one like it? I keep seeing that, but I haven't really read.
It just seems scrawny to me personally. I like the 40k version. It's closer to that piece of artwork, and I always love that version of
Yeah,
him.
but does it make sense though? Because it's like a 30k like midway point or beginning point of his ascension. Like, do you think he never changed at all? Like, type thing. Is that how you picture it? Like when he ascended to demon,
I don't.
He had his one form, and then that was that for 10,000 years, or.
I like that concept in the sense of like the whole reason you become a demon prince is so you achieve immortality. But I guess there is no rule that says that you have to be static.
Yeah, like every time you manifest yourself in reality, maybe you manifest a slightly different kind of shape or whatever. And maybe there are limits to your power. There definitely would be, but maybe you have a couple options,
Yeah, but then again, also time also works differently in the warp. So did even any time at all pass, really?
Yeah.
Haha.
Got me.
I don't know. I'm just not really.
Maybe he just went on a diet. Hey guys,
no, it's the reverse. He went on a bulk.
Yeah, he fucking.
Oh,
he seems scrawny in like the 30k version.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. I thought you said the other way around.
No.
Okay.
Well, I like him.
Well, fine. That's fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just giving my personal opinion because you asked for it.
Well, that's fine. Don't ever give it to me.
I would never give my opinion unsolicited.
Yeah, unless I ask for it, for sure. That's. Well, we'll jump to demons, things that do not care about consent like me and Christian do. Demons are a manifestation of pure, unfathomable psychic energy, a fragment of Chaos God's essence given horrific form. They are the instruments of Chaos God's will, birthed from the very core of their creator's consciousness. These creations from the armies of the ruinous powers within the warp, emerging from the darkest corners of existence to wage war upon one another, and upon the mortals who dare defy them. The Chaos Gods frequently release their demonic legions into the galaxy, where they are summoned by the shifting tides of fate. Sometimes these invasions are the culmination of eons of plotting carefully orchestrated by their dark minds. Other times they are simply opportunistic fruition of the unexpected rift and the howling warp storm, tearing open the fabric of reality to allow these nightmarish hosts to spill forth and ravage the mortal realm. Such invasions are always preceded by the ominous signs of corruption, dark omens, a fevered activity of chaos cultists, a hideous mutation, and hideous mutations twisting the very air itself. When your wall starts growing eyeballs, you might got yourself a chaos infestation. Tongues, also. Any body parts really chalk up to chaos infestation.
And then you got to call the Grey Knight exterminators, who will exterminate everything.
The nice
including
part
you.
about it, though, is it is a free service. And they do it with a smile on their face. And isn't that the best kind of
Yeah.
worker? When the armies of the gods materialize in the real space, they bend the very essence of their existence to their will. Each demonic legion bears the unmistakable mark of its master's power. Their forms and actions a twisted reflection of their dark creator. Khorne's legions march his unstoppable tide of rage and fury, their every step accompanied by the blaring infernal horns, the crack of whips and urging the bloodthirsty hordes forward. Beneath banners of brass and iron, monstrous creatures roar and strike with violence, cutting down all in their path. The battlefield becomes a blighted testament to Khorne's wrath, a place where every life extinguished is a gift to the blood god, where slaughter is a sacred ritual. Where slaughter is a sacred ritual, and the spilling of blood is both an offering and a tribute. Acts of violence and mutilation serve only to glorify the Lord of Battle, and even those who attempt to resist his demons become nothing more than fuel to stoke his fury, their blood and rage feeding his insatiable hunger. Tzeentch, the great deceiver, is the most insidious of the gods, always plotting, ever watchful for weaknesses to exploit. His attacks are never what they seem. From behind every strike is a labyrinth web of schemes, each designed to unravel the foundations of his enemy's very existence. His mind weaves its plans through time itself, leaving mortals blind to the machinations that stretch over millennia. Fun.
I'm just going to continue because it's I'm just rolling on from what you're saying there. Through this artful manipulation, the changer of ways sows chaos among his foes, setting them upon one another with whispers and illusions. When the moment is right, Tzeentch's minions, cackling with maddened glee, sweep across the battlefield, their power borne on wings of sorcery and deceit. They strike with precision, exploiting vulnerabilities, unraveling reality itself with a single touch, and ensuring that every victory serves to further the unholy designs of their master. Nurgle's legions march not with haste, but with slow inevitability that spreads decay and despair in their wake. The very air thickens with the noxious stench of corruption, as the clang of rusted bells and the dirge of the unholy chants precede them. They come as a tide of rot, advancing beneath a thick, impenetrable cloud of flies that follow their every step. Before them, the ground is consumed by swarming demon mites, and behind them, the fleshy hulks that command the march leave a trail of death and decay in their wake. Life itself is undone, reduced to mulch and filth, from which grotesque fungi and poisonous plants rise, their tendrils latching onto everything in a twisted mockery of life's resilience. Slaanesh's invasions are born in the shadow of desire, creeping into the hearts of mortals with the subtlest of touches. His power infects the soul before it manifests, twisting the very will of those it touches into a craving of excess and indulgence. As his influence spreads, it consumes all, transforming the weak-willed into mindless slaves to their basest desires. When his demonic legions do finally materialize, they come in waves of beguiling grace, their every movement designed to ensnare the senses and distract the mind. The enemy is left in a stupor of lust and longing, their will broken before the full force of Slaanesh's minions. With blinding speed, these creatures descend upon their prey, cutting through opposition in a blood-soaked frenzy, leaving only ruin and debauchery in their wake.
Cool. All the different little ways that they go about manifesting their little entities.
Yeah.
There are some main categories for sure, like greater demons, lesser demons. Then they have beasts or demonic creatures that can be broken down into beasts and steeds. They also have heralds, which I always kind of chalk up to lesser demons. Because they take the same form, although they have a little more power level to them. They take the same form of a lesser demon, but they're amped up to 10. But
yeah, stronger versions.
When we read this, I want the question to be when we read through these kind of different categories at the end, could there be room for another category? Like, do we want something greater than greater demons, or maybe some other middle ground? But maybe keep that in the back of your mind as we go through these.
Oh, it was already in the back of my mind.
Very good. Excellent.
The demons are always in the back of my mind. All right.
Oh.
Especially the greater demons. And among the boundless rolling tides of demonic legions, the greater demons stand as the embodiment of true power, towering above the rabble of lesser horrors. They are living, breathing manifestations of their patron chaos gods, perfect reflection of all that chaos is. Endless destruction, malice, and the corrupting void that devours all in its path. They are the eternal guardians of their god's twisted realm and the enforcers of its incomprehensible will. These monstrous entities are more than mere servitors. They are the harbingers of chaos, Fury leading their legions in furious incursions into the mortal realms. They serve as heralds, summoning the tides of destruction in the name of the ruinous powers to bend mortals, whether champions or chaos sorcerers, to their god's will. Yet, even as instruments of their dark patrons, they harbor ambitions and schemes of their own, each whispering its own insidious desires into the ever-growing collective mind of the dark gods. When they manifest in real space, greater demons take form as grotesque, towering abominations. Their very presence enough to break the spirit of the most seasoned warriors. They stride through battlefields, their very footsteps shaking the earth, their wrath capable of slaughtering countless foes and tearing through the mightiest of tanks with ease. Their bodies shimmer with a sickening aura, their sorcerous powers drawn from the raw, corrupting energy of the warp itself, rendering them nearly invulnerable to the feeble weapons of mortals. To bring such an entity to the material world requires a staggering price. The very act of summoning a greater demon demands a flood of psychic energy, the very fabric of reality itself bending and warping as the demon steps from the immaterium into real space. But this energy can never come without a cost. To manifest, a greater demon requires a living being to act as its conduit, a gateway between worlds. And in the transfer of such raw, uncontainable power, the mortal vessel is obliterated, consumed utterly by the demon's arrival. Such a sacrifice is inevitable, for the demon's rampant energy ravages its host from within, leaving nothing but ruin in its wake. The price is never the summoner, for the sacrifice must always come from another. A twisted gift to the gods that serves as a reminder of the unholy bond between chaos and its chosen.
Cool.
So would like Perturabo, was that a greater demon that came to him or possessed him, or what did he turn
So
into?
he turned into a demon prince, which is a mortal
Okay.
follower who has been given powers of the warp. So as opposed to the demons that are like of the warp.
Okay, but they're not like ontologically the same as a demon.
No,
when you're a demon
no,
prince.
they are this weird hybrid
Okay.
where technically, yes, they are demons now, and they abide by the same rules as demons do. That's how they get their
Okay.
immortality. But they were mortals in the first place. They were humans or Eldar or whatever.
Yeah. And
Okay,
they're
gotcha.
different from someone like a possessed who has a demon in them.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's still just like a
Yeah,
human.
okay.
But yeah, Demon Prince
Yeah,
is like they
yeah,
have
yeah.
been blessed and have been given full access.
To ascend.
Yeah. Which is also different than just like you're not a demon prince if you just have a cool mutated arm and you're like, look at this cool crab arm, and you're like, don't count, buddy.
That doesn't count. Does an enormous dong count? I'm just asking for a friend.
Yeah. I think Khorne would be quite pleased with the battering you do with that thing. Let's go to lesser demons,
Right.
which is like my dong. A lesser demon of chaos is one of the countless horrors that plague the warp, an abomination born of the blackened heart of the immaterium. These foul entities are legion, an endless horde in the service of their malevolent creators. They are the foot soldiers, the beasts of war, the twisted messengers, and the keepers of the dark tally, the faceless, formless servants of the chaos gods, existing only to fulfill the darkest whims of their masters. They are the heart of the demonic legions, the bloodied and the brutal armies that wage an unceasing war against all who dare stand in the way of the master's desire for domination and destruction. These wretched creatures are no more than puppets in the hands of their gods, born from the very will and consciousness of the chaos gods himself. Created for a singular purpose and discarded without hesitation, they are expendable tools in the eternal struggle for chaos. On the field of battle, they answer only to the exalted leaders, the demonic heralds, the greater demons, who channel the will of the gods and with unrelenting fury. Lesser demons are mere vessels of their master's desires, driven by a single unshakable directive to serve and die in the name of chaos. Yet, for all their insignificance in the eyes of their dark lords, these demons are formidable forces in the material realm. Their nature, birthed from the warp, endows them in unnatural speed, monstrous strength, and resilience that far exceeds mortal beings. They are creatures forged from pure malice, their very existence anathema to all that is natural. For those few mortals foolish or ambitious enough to call upon the forces of chaos, the barriers between the realms can be breached. With the correct rituals and unholy power, the lesser demons can be summoned, tearing through the veil of reality to wreak havoc upon the living. Once unleashed, these demon hordes descend upon their prey with savage, frenzied hunger, knowing that their time in the mortal realm is fleeting and their return to the warp inevitable. Among the demons of chaos is the lesser demons, who are most eager to heed the summons of the mortal heretics, those twisted souls who have bargained away their sanity for a taste of power. These demons thirst for every moment they can carve out of the mortal world, feeding on the chaos and destruction they leave in their wake before their power wanes and they are drawn back into the roiling depths of the warp, lost once more to the eternal storm that burst them. Okay, so a couple questions here. That last line kind of sprung one up on me. Like, are they a one and done thing? Like, greater demons, we have examples of them being banished, coming out. Heralds as well. We have examples of them being banished, coming back. But lesser demons, that almost sounds like it's a one-off thing. Once that energy is created, it's made, and then once it vanishes, it's kind of regathered and joined back in.
Yeah, I think that's what that implies, is that they are, like you said, a one and done. They just exist as part of the storm and then they vanish along with it, just absorbed back into it. And like, I've never heard, like, there's no characters, there's no named lesser demons, there's no, like, they don't have a personality or essence beyond like whatever form that they took, right?
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, anyways.
Yeah, I think so. That's a fun way to picture demons, because I kind of pictured them all immortal. Because as we were saying, like, the whole point of a mortal ascending to demon prince is because then he becomes immortal,
Yeah, but it's on that scale, right?
Yeah.
Like the more powerful you are, the more self-awareness, I guess, you get to have. All right, let's get into demonic creatures. These wretched and primal entities are the lowest of the demonic hierarchy, little more than slavering, mindless tools of destruction. Their intellect is a hollow echo, consumed by base instincts, rendering them little more than beasts of the warp. These creatures are granted as subservient tools to the more potent demons, or sometimes to those few mortals who have earned the favor of the chaos gods through acts of vile devotion. In the labyrinthine cruelty of the warp, these demons are often classified into two distinct categories: the demonic beasts and the demonic steeds. Beasts are the raw, untamed manifestation of violence, their minds consumed by feral hunger, devoid of the intricate malice of higher demons. They are primitive, driven by instinct and bloodlust, more akin to the savage creatures of real space than their more sophisticated kin. These demonic beasts in all their viciousness serve as the loyal hounds of chaos, unleashed by their masters to hunt, slaughter, and tear through all the sands in their path. To command them is to wield a primal force of destruction, uncaring, brutal, and merciless. Yeah, they're very much just like animals. They're beasts. They're mindless, almost automatons.
Yeah.
Steeds.
Maybe not mindless, but they're instinct driven.
Sure, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Instinct. There's no self-awareness to them.
Yeah.
Steeds. Among the demonic beasts, there are those chosen to become steeds. More than mere beasts, they are darkly magnificent and terrifying creatures, summoned from the deepest pits of the warp. These steeds serve as prized mounts, their twisted forms an extension of their rider's will. They are used by the lesser demons and the Chaos Champions, granting them a fierce and unstoppable means of transport across the mortal realms. To claim one of these horrid creatures is a dangerous and almost suicidal endeavor, for the very act of taming such an abomination requires power, ruthlessness, and the favor of the ruinous powers themselves. The price of mastery over such beasts is paid in blood and agony, for these creatures, like all things of the warp, are bounded only by their own insatiable hunger for carnage.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, the steeds are cool. They can be like the juggernauts of Khorne that look like almost metal rhinoceroses. But they also have the floating discs of Tzeentch, which are more like just circle discs that you fly on, like little hoverboards. Very cool though.
I always found that one so weird. They seemed strange as like a mount, like you have a juggernaut versus like a floating disc.
Yeah.
Slaanesh also has I forget what they're called, but they're similar. Just like I think they're steeds of Slaanesh or something like that. But
Yeah, I picture Tzeentch's demons, and they're very water themed. They got like manta rays and stuff like that. So that disc is almost water themed too, where it's like instead of moving through water, it's just moving through air, and it's almost like a jellyfish with
a
teeth,
surfboard,
but like, yeah,
I guess. But comparing them,
yeah, sure.
it's odd. It's odd. I whatever. It's odd. But that's fine. Chaos can be whatever it wants to be.
You do you
Who am I to
chaos,
say?
yeah. Do you guys wish there or think there could be another rank mixed in there? Like maybe the easiest way to go about it would be doing like Leviathan demons, which are the size of Titans and kind of a Titan equivalent. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that could be cool. Especially with the power creep that's going on with 40k, it'd be cool to have like a comparable to like a knight or a titan sized entity. But also greater demons can sometimes fill that void. Like they're pretty big just on their own.
Yeah, and there does seem to be like a difference in size. Like, did you ever look at I know you did, the Forge World Greater Demons that they came out with way back in the day?
Yeah.
They were massive, man. They were like 2 feet tall. They were Titan based, where now like the plastic ones are not that big. So like, yeah,
not nearly as big.
maybe you don't need to go up in size at all, because those greater demons can be as big as you want depending on how much power you pump in them.
Yeah, and that's always what I kind of assumed was the case, was that there's no consistency to how they scale. They just kind of grow or shrink based on their needs or the needs of the game, or like however much power was dumped into them when they were summoned. The other thing too, the classification I would like to add would be something more in the neutral zone of that like undivided, just like roiling massive chaos. I shout out to Mantic Games. They have a model line called Nightmares. And I think they have some really cool models that fit that kind of like horror / like mix of just things that are like hard to define, because the warp is often spoken about in those terms, right? Like just hard to define, no clear features.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably the route I would go, is something less aligned and just being more just chaos entity.
Okay. Yeah, so almost more like Chaos Spawn, but like that's like,
but not Spawn.
Yeah, like that's like the mortal version, So you just like
but more just made of warp energy. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I would like to see more of personally. And if I ever did a demon army, that's totally what I would do, is just third-party Mantic Games models. And
yeah, you have to send me a link to them. I tried Googling them, Mantic Games Nightmares, but I didn't quite see anything.
Something like Nightmare, maybe.
Nightmare Incursion. Okay, it's a booster pack. Maybe there's some stuff there. Cool.
Yeah, they have a whole assortment of models in there, but any number of them I would use. Some of them are a little more Halloween-y themed that I obviously wouldn't go with, like pumpkin-headed monsters or whatever, but Night
But
Stalker.
we're not going to argue with the warp.
Right.
They want.
They could manifest any way they want.
Yeah, exactly. We just
If
went
they
over
infest your pumpkin patch, you just got to deal with it.
this. Cock shotgun.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of what I would like to see more of, is more in that ambiguous zone.
Yeah.
I sense a theme with all my wishes for chaos.
Ambiguity. I can't say that word, but yeah. Followers are up next. To be a follower of chaos is to embrace a path of endless temptation, corruption, and self-destruction, where power is sought at any cost, and the loyalty is given to the dark gods in exchange for promises of unimaginable might. Chaos is a seductive force, offering power beyond mortal comprehension, but it demands absolute devotion in return. Followers of chaos are constantly driven by their thirst for more, whether it be craving for dominion over others or the indulgence of their base desires, or the desire for eternal favor and the ascension within the warp. To gain more power, one must offer sacrifices, commit unspeakable acts, and prove oneself worthy of the gods' attention, often through acts of violence, sorcery, and betrayal. The goals of Chaos followers are as diverse as the gods they serve, but they are united by a common desire: the spread of corruption and the subjugation of the universe to the whims of their dark patrons. They seek to bring about the downfall of the Imperium, to tear apart the structures of reality itself, and to reshape the universe in their twisted image, all while racing towards the inevitable eternal damnation that awaits them. Interesting quick thought here before we dive into these different kind of followers. Like, there seems to be a very strong hatred of the Imperium. Even during like the Eldar time of their highlight, I don't know, was there that same vibe with the Chaos Gods? Like, we got to band together and destroy the Eldar. They're like, see,
I don't know.
it just seems very much like they hate the Imperium for some, like,
I mean, there's that element of what the Emperor has convorted with the Chaos Gods directly. So like, and the Chaos Gods see the Emperor as either a threat or a pawn or a tool or whatever have you. So it makes it a little more personal to the gods.
Yeah, we'll get to the Dark King, I'm just kind of realizing at the end of this episode. And that's from the Siege of Terra Volume 3, I think. I don't want to go too much into it yet, but we'll get back there.
Yeah, but I think the Imperium represents a unique threat to chaos.
Yeah, and like reasons like that, or like, yeah.
Yeah, because even the way like Slaanesh views the Eldar is more of like a food source, and the Eldar are more scared of and running from rather than like anything else. But yeah.
Yeah, and like even during the Eldar's height of society, it's like, it's not like the Chaos Gods brought about their downfall. In a way they did by birthing Slaanesh, but that was the Eldar's own undoing ultimately.
Yeah, they did it to themselves. Yeah. Just in the chat there, kind of moving back to the question you asked, Mark, about other things we'd like to see for demons. Liar said unbound to giant creatures. That would be cool too.
Yeah.
In the same line of like, the more neutral chaos, but like have some bigger factions, almost like greater demons of chaos and divided kind of thing.
Now this would be wild too. You take that another step further. I love the unbound demon idea, but what about taking kind of our undivided concept where you smash together a bloodthirster and
that could be really cool,
a Prince of Excess, and now you got this cool Khorne Slaanesh demon, half and half.
Yeah, and you could do any variation of that 4-way hybrid. Like, oh my goodness!
Now that's some chaos undivided.
I think about the makings of a new Pokemon game. Got to catch all the demons.
Got to catch them all. Yeah, fuck yeah. Yo, Jordan, did you know that Christian has been cheating on us?
I wouldn't phrase it like that, Mark.
I would definitely. He has another podcast on the side. Did you know this, Jordan? He's been doing a Pokemon podcast. He's been catching all the podcasts, Jordan.
The Pokalore podcast, for anyone that's interested. It's not officially launched yet, Mark. Thanks for
good.
No, it's fine.
Oh, I can edit that out if you want. And I'll kill these people
the
in the chat.
Can't get out. No, it's fine. By the time this episode drops, it will be more ready to go. But
Jordan's unfazed by this information. When I found out, I was
Shocked and
flabbergasted, and I
horrified.
felt betrayed and hurt. Yeah, and intrigued. Don't get me wrong. Definitely gonna listen, but
Demon princes are the chosen and elevated champions of the dark gods, mortals who have been granted immense power in exchange for their unwavering loyalty and service. These beings, once mere mortals, rise to become towering godlike figures after enduring the trials and tribulations of chaos. Transformed through horrific mutations and endowed with immense psychic might, demon princes are often granted dominion over vast swaths of their god's domain within the warp. Their ascension is a symbol of their patron's favor, a reward for their dedication and acts of service, whether it be through bloodshed, dark sorcery, or acts of devotion to chaos. As a result, demon princes often serve as generals of the demonic legions, leading entire armies into battle across the material realms, forever seeking more power, furthering their god's influence, and establishing their eternal legacy in the name of chaos.
We move on to champions. Champions are mortals who have proven themselves worthy in the eyes of the chaos gods, often by demonstrating unparalleled prowess, ruthless ambition, or a soul untainted by weakness. These individuals, imbued with the favor of their patron, are elevated to positions of great power and influence, though they remain in mortal form. The chaos gods bestow upon them unholy gifts, such as enhanced strength, mastery of dark magics, or unmatched combat prowess, transforming them into agents of their god's will. Champions are warriors, sorcerers, and leaders who carve out their path of destruction and conquest in the mortal realms, leaving a trail of blood and ruin in their wake. In return for their service, they are promised unimaginable power and eternal favor. Yet the price for such gifts is always steep, an insatiable thirst for more power, an unyielding desire to please their gods, and ultimately their own inevitable damnation. So what's like a an example of a chaos champion? Like they're not a demon prince. Oh, okay.
They're a mortal champion.
yeah.
They're a
So
champion. Yeah.
Abaddon the Despoiler would be a good example. Well, maybe not a good example. He's not a champion. That was the bad example. That was probably the worst example. A good example would be Khorne the Betrayer, Lucius the Eternal. Um, any Space Marine who's kind of been around and now has a couple mutations, got the favor of a god.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they don't even have to be a space marine either. Like regular humans can also become champions.
But there's
Yeah,
someone who they've given themselves over to chaos, but they haven't been like ascended to a demon prince like Perturabo or something.
Yeah.
But they still get some benefits
I'm
of
glad you
that
kind
as
of
well.
brought that up because, like, the next category down is cultists, and I had included here a little bit on servants to chaos, but it's this homebrew kind of bit where if we're looking at tiers where Demon Prince has all the powers and champions have a little bit, then cultists are like pawns. But there has to be this middle ground where it's like you're not just this pawn, you're not a champion either. And I was thinking, yeah, servant would kind of be a good title for that, where if your sergeant in your Chaos Space Marine squad is the champion, then the servant would just be a regular Space Marine, Chaos Space Marine, as opposed to a cultist.
somewhere they're above a pawn, but they, actively serve and have a chance of being rewarded by the chaos gods. But so do cultists too, right? Like the cultist just happens to do something.
Yeah.
That.
Well, like, yeah, I picture it as stairs, and cultist is step 1, and then step 2 is servant. And yeah, you get a little bit of power, and you get higher and higher every time until you fully ascend. So
Or die a
or
horrible
yeah.
death. All right. Well, let's get into the cultists then. Cultists are the mortal pawns and worshippers of the chaos gods, individuals who have forsaken their humanity in favor of servitude to the dark powers. These corrupted souls are driven by a single-minded devotion to their dark patrons, whether for the promise of power, eternal life, or indulgence in their basest desires. Cultists are often the first to be seduced by the whispers of chaos, drawn into its web through manipulation, fear, or the promise of divine favor. They infiltrate society, spreading the influence of chaos through their acts of rebellion, terrorism, and unspeakable rituals, often performing dark rites that open gateways to the immaterium, allowing demonic forces to spill into the material world. Despite their devotion, cultists are ultimately expendable, their souls sacrifices to the gods in exchange for fleeting power. They are the foundation of the chaos's mortal power, flesh to be consumed, broken, and remade in the image of their masters.
Yeah, cool. So those are kind of the followers. Oftentimes the mind will go to human followers, human cultists, human demon princes. But let's not forget, we always got to remember all the other races. Eldar demon princes, Eldar champions.
Man.
What about orcs, maybe? Because, we do have Tuska the demon killer, who's kind of a champion of Khorne.
Honestly, that's such such a misused part of 40K that I wish they did more with.
That's a fun concept.
It's a field that's so ripe for conversions or a model line if GW actually did that ever, which they won't, but at least for the fans to take into their own hands and do something with. Chaos Eldar, not Dark Eldar, but Chaos Eldar is such a cool concept.
It does seem like the Eldar would be ripe for chaos.
Yeah, I just feel like they would be like a candle that burns too bright and then burns itself out. They serve chaos, but then their soul gets devoured so quick. But maybe they have such power during that time, so it's that worth it kind of thing.
Yeah, or like you said, the chaos orcs would be so cool. Just with almost word bearer runes scrawled all over their bodies and oh man,
but orc glyphs.
Yeah, things you could do, man. Glowing eyes,
fuck yeah,
endless options and opportunity just pissed away. But
all right, let's get into the minor chaos gods. Beyond the 4 great chaos gods lie a vast and shifting multitude of lesser entities that prowl the warp, each vying for power, influence, and the fleeting devotion of mortals. These minor gods, demonic lords, and twisted beings are often the spawn of forgotten ambitions, abandoned desires, or corrupted mortals who sought ascension but were overshadowed by the greater powers. They exist in a constant state of flux, their forms and identities shifting as they seek to carve out their domains within the immaterium. Some serve as rich rivals to the 4 major gods, while others act as vassals or even tools, pawns in the endless game of power and treachery. They may offer their followers strange boons, forbidden knowledge, or corrupting gifts in exchange for worship. Though their promise are always fleeting and their true nature often proves as dangerous as it is alluring, these entities are far from stable. Their power ebbs and wanes with the ebb and flow of mortal desire, and the vagaries of the warp and the intrigues of their more powerful brethren, leaving them in a constant state of peril, ever seeking to rise above their peers and claim their place in the annals of chaos. So could these lesser gods hypothetically overtake the 4 main gods, if they had enough worshippers or something like that?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Them's the rules.
Them's the rules. I do have one episode in this series called The 5th Chaos God, which is between Malice and the Dark King, and the concept essentially that, what happens if one of these becomes more powerful and ascends to that next level? We've talked on Lorehammer before about Vashtar, kind of the dark mechanicum, lord of technology kind of dude, being a chaos god. To me, he fits a different category. Maybe he has warp influence, a lot of warp influence, but the chaos gods are very unique and they all have characteristics. Vashtar doesn't have demons. There's no demon Vashtars. So that where Malice and the Dark King hypothetically would have these demons and stuff, they follow the rules a little better.
But all of them pale in comparison to the true 5th chaos god, Gork. Or possibly more.
Well, yeah, and that's the 7th episode of the series. Maybe we do a Gork and Mork episode, because I've come to believe that those are actually chaos gods, or not chaos gods, but warp gods now, as opposed to I've come to believe. I've read it on the Wikipedia. No, we did an episode on Wog Energy, and we talked about how they definitely give off the vibes of chaos gods, so that'll be a fun episode to do as well.
Have you guys heard the gospel of our Savior Gork and Mork?
I have, actually, yes.
Well, I have, yes. It's a walking good time. Yeah. There are a couple other gods I'll read off real quick. They don't have a lot of information on them and they weren't too specific, but I'll give it to you anyways because I don't know when we'd ever mention them again, but now they're out there. This one is called Ansel Mark, and that's spelled ANS apostrophe L comma space MO apostrophe RCCK. And Faz Itar are minor chaos deities. Chaos Space Marines were rumored to praise them by putting spikes on their armor. Their names are puns on the last names of Brian Ansel and Michael Moorcock. And
They should
Frank
just stuck with the name Moorcock for Chaos God.
Moorcock. Fuck. And then we also got Mord Dagon, the Eater of the Dead, a supernatural beast of legend, godhead of the Saiyan cannibal cult. Say and then it is also suspected that the Raptors worship a chaos entity, chaos raptors from Chaos Space Marine Legions, where they're like jump pack troops.
The jump pack guys, yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about Malice because he will get his episode. Malal, also known as Malice, is the forgotten and forsaken god of chaos, an entity defined by nihilism and destruction. Unlike the other gods, who are driven by specific passions or desires, Malal embodies the pure, self-destructive hatred, not just for the other gods, but for existence itself. His very nature is to reject the dominion of other chaos gods, seeking to unmake all they have wrought. Malal's followers are often outcasts and rebels, individuals who seek to topple the established order of the warp and bring about the destruction of all things, including the very forces that birthed them. Though Malal's presence in the warp is often diminished and his followers are few, those who serve him revel in anarchy and discord, seeing their existence as a constant struggle against the order and structure imposed by the other gods. His symbol is one of contradiction, a constant reminder that even in chaos, there is those who would seek to undo it all. Yeah, very, very Joker-esque from Dark Knight.
Yeah, I've often heard him described as being chaos against itself, or chaos. What's the other one?
Chaos for the sake of chaos.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, chaos for the
chaos
sake of
chaos, or chaos for chaos's sake.
Yeah.
Is another good way to say it.
Yeah, anarchy, like cool concept. I there's a whole thing like about copyright and stuff with Malal allegedly. I don't know how much is rumor, how much is true. I wish they would.
It was a fun concept, man.
Yeah, like I think it should.
And they had the Sons of Malice too. They had a Space Marine chapter that looked cool. It had like
they do exist. The Sons of Malice are still canon, and they have like a black and white color scheme. But I just wish GW would invest more into the whole concept of Malice. Would be very cool. And they could name it anything they want. It could be Anarcho.
GW, if you're listening, like I seriously get a bunch of messages about how cool Malal and Malice actually are. And I know I've said things on here, and then the next week I'm like, holy fuck, am I tapped in or are they tapped into me? So let's see some Malice, Malal. Let's get that going.
Or
GW.
You could have just hired us to be your lore writers, but my goodness.
Yeah.
Skip the middleman.
I would have done it for free just so they would stop fucking with it. Wraithbone isn't a psychic material anymore. Are they fucked?
No, it is.
What's wrong with them?
No, it is. I just reject their new canon.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes, I do reject anything past 8th edition. It's all fucked. Like, I can't believe what they're doing with it, man.
Just sledgehammer to heart. All right, let's talk about the next chaos god to be. The Puma King. Just kidding. The Dark King. The Dark King, often whispered about in the darkest corners of the warp, is a mysterious and malevolent figure, an entity whose true nature is cloaked in shadow and secrecy. Some claim him to be an ancient and forgotten god, a primordial force of dominance and manipulation, who once ruled over vast realms in the Immaterium, before being eclipsed by the ascension of the 4 major chaos gods. Others believe the Dark King is a patron of those who seek to wield power through subversion, seduction, and control, offering forbidden knowledge to those who dare serve him. His followers are often those who operate in the shadows, agents, spies, and deceivers, who seek to unravel the webs of fate for their own gain. Little is known of the Dark King's goals, but his influence is undeniable, and his whispers can be heard in the minds of mortals and demons alike, promising ultimate power to those willing to submit to his silent reign. Whether he is a rival to the established Chaos Gods or a force biding its time, the Dark King's presence in the warp is ever looming, a harbinger of twisted ambitions and unseen dangers.
So the Dark King, and I'll give you one sentence, and then I think we just leave it for that episode because I honestly don't know a whole lot about him. I just know kind of the teaser. So I'd like to know more before I give like more definitive stuff. But the Dark King is the Emperor, or is rumored to be the Emperor. Like it's prophesied that the Emperor, when he dies or ascends or whatever, he will go into the warp and become another Chaos God or another god of the warp. So that's kind of the Dark King prophecy.
Yeah, I would almost phrase it in the sense of he ought to be the Dark King, but obviously things will change, and gets into the whole like prophecy and like what should or what could have been kind of concepts. But yeah, like you said, I that's the most I'd be willing to delve into it without committing to the full episode's worth of discussion,
which we will do soon. TM.
Yeah. Another 8-year timer starts now.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of, we got through the context of this episode. It's going to be fun doing this series. I can't believe it took 150 episodes to talk about the Chaos Gods and finally give them their due.
Now we have to kill a bunch of listeners as sacrifices. That was the deal.
Yeah. That's what's happening. And whoever's in the chat now gets to get sacrificed. Congrats. Yay. Yeah, no, it's going to be fun. Some of it can be dark, but also Jordan was almost laughing over the top hysterical at it because it is too dark. It's almost comical. And that's part of the fun of it.
Yeah, it's kind of cartoonish, some of it, which I think is on purpose.
Yeah. We're doing call-ins now. I'm just seeing if anyone's going to pop in. Do you guys like any of these questions I wrote down that you want to address at the bottom there? We could always look over some things.
I kind of like the question you have there is, could an entire world be turned into a single unified demon? Do you mean like as a collective, like every person kind of like melts together? Or are you talking the planet itself becomes like, what is it, Unicron? Or
yeah, exactly. Like that.
Oh, like a giant.
We have planets that have become a Mechanica member. Why can't we have a demon?
Aren't some of the demon worlds said to be like actually just a demon, just like a giant demon? I think there's there's canon somewhere that says that.
Not all demon worlds are real material worlds lost in the immaterium.
Yeah.
Some. You're riding a demon's ass through space and time. Well, it looks like the call-ins are no mas, no bueno. Lots of people, while are in the chat, are probably like watching with their girlfriend next to them. I can only assume
they're
that's why they don't
taking
want to
their
talk to us.
girlfriends on a Valentine's date, Mark.
Yeah,
they're choosing not to be in.
I can only imagine.
They have one headphone in while they're like sitting at the dinner table, like listening to her talk.
Yeah. Shut up, Timmy, or I'll hit you again. Daddy's got to listen to his lore hammer.
I think some people are actually like in the midst of getting it on with us, talking to them in the background. We're setting the mood for them.
You know what, though? The chances are probably good that has happened and will happen tonight with me.
You like to listen to yourself talk.
Yeah. While I humor myself with the cardboard cutout of Christian I have. Happy Valentine's Day. Okay, well, maybe the final thing I'm going to mention is, like I said, Gork and Mork. What do you guys think? Should we do an episode on them now? It doesn't matter. Do you chalk them up as chaos gods or close enough to it?
I fluctuate, and it goes back to the whole thing of like how much should just be left alone as speculation, how much I want to be concrete. And I fluctuate between Gork and Mork being like legendary old ones to being chaos entities, like at both extremes, right? Like one, they're just mortals essentially that have been deified and mythologized, all the way to like they just straight up are entities in the warp. I do kind of like the idea of all factions having a chaos god patron type being on their side, but I also don't like that concept at the same time.
what do you think about Gork and Mork just being the last two quarks that have been lost in the warp? Just like Jed Can's lost in the warp, blaming Russ. And yeah, what do you think about that kind of concept? Where they're almost more like a Calidor Drago type character.
I like that because there's potential to also bring them out of the warp and be like Primarch level, like creatures that you could eventually use.
I see. Yeah.
But again, like I don't want any of that to happen. I just want the questions to be there with no true answers.
So no episode. Don't lump them in with this kind of series.
No. Do an episode as with them with that concept in mind, but don't profess it as the truth. You know,
no definitive statements are ever made by me. We can confirm that with Lorehammer Legal. Nothing I say can be used against me
in court. Yeah, good call. Yeah, no. I think we should discuss all possibilities, and like we can pick the ones we like the most. And then the same is for the Emperor too. I would say, like, is the Emperor God of Order? Is the Emperor the Dark King? Is the Emperor right? Like, is the Emperor truly been dead all this time and doesn't exist at all? Like, let's contemplate all of them and let's have whole episodes on each one. But I wouldn't say like this should be the truth or this should be the case. And I hope they make it concrete because as we've seen, every time they do that, it is always disappointing.
It is, isn't it? Never meet your hero. Never develop your lore. Well, I guess that's that episode. Let's do the end and the notes. If you're inspired to buy anything, we didn't really name anything specific, but like, just go buy some chaos. I don't even care what chaos demons you buy from Merlin's Miniatures using promo code Lorehammer. Just go buy as much chaos as your wallet will allow, really. Whether that's $10, $20.
Excuse me, no, as your credit card will allow.
Your credit card will allow.
Yeah.
Merlin's Miniatures. Use the link in the description below. You're going to like it. If you join their mailing list, 10% off. Boom. That means Merlin's Miniatures is already better at selling you miniatures than GW is. I don't know the last time GW gave me a discount. They just give me fucking heartburn and rage. So Merlin's Miniatures, thank you guys so much for sponsoring Lorehammer for the last 6 episodes, and I hope everyone truly goes and uses their stuff. Cool. Merlin's Miniatures, promo code Lorehammer. Also, go check out the Lorehammer Listener Lore podcast. It's a podcast where I read your homebrew lore. You know, it's never dead. It's like a phoenix. I put it down for a second and it rises back with a fiery passion until I burn myself out again. So it'll be back. Don't worry. But it's around almost 200 episodes out.
Jordan, you want to shill our podcast because I'm cheating on you now?
Yeah. Yeah, make sure you guys go check out the best Star Wars podcast on the HoloNet, the Star Wars podcast. Go listen to it. You can find us anywhere. Just Google search Star Wars podcast and we'll pop up. We're on all the social medias. Make sure to listen to it. Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
And if you want to start dabbling in Pokemon mythology, come listen
Which
to
we do.
You do, absolutely you do. You got to catch all the demons. Catch all the podcasts with me. Come listen to the Pokalore podcast. It's a side project. It's not as refined as some of my other works, but it's a work in progress, and we're just starting. So let's see where it goes. Come give us a little listener boost out there.
It's like your children. You know, the first one, aka Lorehammer, was good, but then they get worse and worse as you do more.
Progressively,
Yeah. Until you have the useless bottom of the tier kid like me.
Yeah.
I'm the youngest. Well, that's fun. That's cool. I'm glad there's so many podcasts out there because work days can be long. So we're happy you joined us on that. And thank you guys so much for supporting the show. We have some new Patreon members this last couple days. We got Angry Plain Jane Workshop, Nikki, and Mitch. So thank you guys so much. Go join the Patreon. You never have to listen to an ad again. It's fucking sweet. Why would you ever listen to an ad for $2.50? Like, there's two types of people in the world: people who are retarded and people who subscribe to the Lorehammer Patreon. So thank you so much.
Sometimes they're both.
Yes. Two things can be true at once, my friend. All right, boys. Well, we'll see you all on the next episode. Christian, Jordan, thanks for joining.
That was a pleasure.
Sweet. Yes. See you later.